Chapter 64:21. After deciding not to leave for the time being, Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao He slowly walked forward. With Ling Chuan's identity, no one would notice them. The effect of the illusory grass was still very good. They wouldn't be discovered for a while. Xiao He, let's just find a place where there are no people and stay for a while. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. The reason why she wandered around with Ling Chuan's face was to understand the situation here. This was the first time she had come into contact with the sects in the immortal region. After observing, she found that the sects in the immortal region were not much different from the upper realm or even the lower realm. However, many things here were of a higher level. It was obvious that they were of a higher level than the upper realm. Master, why don't we go to the spirit field to take a look? Xiao Hei's eyes lit up. Because of Ling Chuan, they had already heard of the spirit field several times. What exactly was planted in the spirit field? Master, do we still need a farm in this sect? Xiao He was in disbelief. Even in the lower realm, although cultivators had to take on some chores, no one would do this kind of farming. When it thought that cultivators who ascended to the immortal region actually had to farm, it felt a little unbelievable. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix-like eyes raised slightly. She was actually a little curious about this. She had never been to the immortal region before. Granny Hua and the others ate very casually. The rice they ate now was all bought from the upper realm. The rice planted by immortal cultivators should be different, right? Since you're interested, then let's go take a look. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Xiao He nodded excitedly. Okay. Originally, the human and beast were still a little confused about the environment of the Xianxing sect. However, Ling Chuan's recent actions were too eye-catching. Therefore, whenever she appeared, there would always be people lamenting about her experience. Therefore, in a few words, Bailey Hongzhuang also clearly knew where the spirit field was. She even almost chatted with someone along the way. Fortunately, the people who traveled with her were not planting spirit fields. After a certain distance, they separated. Master, look, that's the spiritual field. Xiao He looked at the paddy fields in front of her, and her eyes were filled with shock. Large tracts of paddy fields were now showing signs of ripening. The golden ears of wheat were plump and full, looking very tempting. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up the ears of wheat in front of her. She only needed to sense a little before she realized that there was something different about this ear of wheat. This was because the ears of wheat were filled with spiritual energy. No wonder it's called a spiritual field. These rice paddies are all irrigated with spiritual energy. Bailey Hongzhuang had a look of understanding on her face, and she was looking forward to it. The immortal region was indeed different. Even this rice was completely different. Xiao He swallowed her saliva greedily. Then the rice must taste really good. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. After eating this rice, it should be able to increase the strength of the cultivator. No wonder they are called immortals. This rice is no longer an ordinary item. If I have a chance, I really want to try it. Xiao Hei's face was filled with anticipation. This kind of rice, not only it, but its master and the others had also never tasted it. If we can bring this rice back, Granny Hua and the others will definitely be very happy. Noticing Xiao Hei's eager gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly and said, "That won't do." Chapter 64:22. Now, that Ling Chuan was assigned to guard the spirit field. If the spirit rice was lost, it would be very difficult for Ling Chuan to gain a foothold in the Xianxing sect. Hearing this, Xiao Hei's face immediately collapsed, and a strong sense of helplessness appeared on her face. It wasn't easy to see such a unique treasure, but she could only look at it and not eat it. It was too depressing. We can see if there's anything good in other places. If there's something you're interested in, we can also collect some interest. Since Guosheng captured them here, they naturally couldn't leave so easily. No matter what, they had to leave Guosheng an unforgettable gift. In any case, all the losses they caused now would fall on Guosheng's head. It was rare for them to come to the immortal region, so they had to bring back something interesting. Guosheng didn't expect that the bait he caught would be such a master who wanted to see the world in chaos. If he knew earlier, he would rather not take revenge than capture Bailey Hongzhuang. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. No matter how regretful he was, it was useless. Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao He walked forward and found that in addition to rice, there were also fruits and vegetables. Unsurprisingly, these fruits and vegetables were all irrigated with spirit qi and emitted a charming fragrance. At a glance, they only felt that it was completely different from the fruits and vegetables they usually came into contact with. The aura emitted by it was very similar to the heavenly treasures they usually saw. Although the aura of these fruits and vegetables was slightly weaker, they were just the most ordinary food. It was really surprising that there was such a change. If these weren't fruits and vegetables, but some real medicinal treasures, then the effect should be very amazing. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood why there were so many heavenly treasures in the immortal region. It was because the heavenly treasures here were not only naturally grown, but also artificially grown. Master, eating these things should be very beneficial, right? Xiao He asked curiously. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a playful smile. Although I don't know what effect it has, since it grew in this kind of spirit qi, there must be an effect. Master, Xiao He's eyes narrowed as he smiled. His eyes were filled with craftiness. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly. The human and beast expressions were surprisingly similar. Normally, we don't have many ingredients. Now that we've seen so many, how can we waste them? Now that almost all the cultivators were looking for Bailey Hongzhuang, no one thought that she would hide here. After observing for a while, she found that there was no one else here at all. This was obviously a great opportunity. The man and the beast immediately began to move. Bailey Hongzhuang was mainly in charge of plucking, while Xiao He was in charge of keeping watch. However, when she was on the lookout, Xiao He would also pick some of them. When she saw some fruits that she liked, she immediately stuffed them into her mouth. As soon as she ate them, Xiao He's eyes lit up and a blissful expression appeared on her face. Master, this taste is very delicious. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. You glutton, watch carefully. Don't let anyone discover you. Chapter 64:23. Bailey Hongzhuang walked along this road and found that there were quite a lot of things planted by the Xianxing sect. Therefore, the human and beast directly put away the good things they saw. Master, these fellows are really interesting. They all ran outside to surround you like a swarm of bees. When they come back and see this scene, it will definitely be very interesting. Xiao He looked at the bare tree trunks behind them, and her eyes were full of smiles. However, they didn't pick all of them. They only picked some ripe ones. As for the unripe ones, they didn't waste them. This planting work must be the task of the outer sect disciples. These disciples usually receive the least cultivation resources. As long as they catch me, not only will they receive generous rewards, but they will also be rewarded by the elders. They might even be able to become inner sect disciples. If it were you, what would you do? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Her eyes had already explained everything. Xiao He nodded. Indeed, it's rare to have such an opportunity to soar to the sky. No one will give it up. However, none of them would have thought that we would be here. Speaking of which, this Xianxing sect's resource room must have a lot of treasures. Bailey Hongzhuang fell into deep thought. The resource room of every sect must have a lot of precious treasures. Moreover, this was a sect in the immortal realm. Although the Xianxing sect's level wasn't high among the many sects in the immortal realm and could only be said to be a small sect, it must have a lot of resources. Xiao He was stunned and couldn't help but open her mouth wide. She said in disbelief, Master, you're not thinking of robbing the resource room, are you? Her master was too bold. It seemed that she still couldn't compare to her master. Indeed, I have this idea. Bailey Hongzhuang thought seriously. Right now, the entire Xianxing sect is in chaos. However, the guard of the resource room has always been the strictest. I'm afraid it won't be easy for us to rob it. Even if these elders were alarmed, no one would expect them to have the idea of running to the resource room. However, the people in the resource room shouldn't have left. If we can really bring back all the things in the resource room, that would be great. Xiao He's eyes were filled with anticipation. However, Master, we have to think about this in the long run. Just based on what they were doing now, The entire Xianqing sect would definitely be angered to death by them. Once they were discovered, their fate would be worse than falling into Guosheng's hands. I understand. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was calm. At least, we have to ensure that we won't appear in the same place as him. Otherwise, we will really be exposed. Thinking of this, the man and the beast picked all the fruits in the field and slowly returned to the spirit field. The area of the spirit field is not small, so Ling Chuan shouldn't be the only one looking after it. We can look around and see if he's there. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. With a glance, she found several residences. Little Black slipped into the house like a wisp of smoke. Originally, it thought that it would be very difficult to confirm the identity of the disciples, but it did not expect that the door plate actually had the name of each disciple and the spiritual field they belonged to. In this way, it became very easy to find Ling Chuan. Chapter 64:24. Looking at the words Ling Chuan written on the door plate, Xiaohei found that there was no aura inside, so she simply sneaked into the house to take a look. Ling Chuan was really not inside. It seems that Ling Chuan should have gone out to look for opportunities, as Master said. After Bailey Hongzhuang heard Xiaohei's answer, she couldn't help but frown. In this way, we can't determine the location of Ling Chuan. Master, why don't we just stay here and wait for Ling Chuan to come back? Xiaohei asked. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. We can only do this for now. I hope he can come back soon. Otherwise, once someone finds out that the spiritual field here is lost, the guard of the resource room will become much stricter, and we won't be able to do anything. Xiaohei's eyes dimmed a little. If she didn't have the chance to do such an interesting thing, it would indeed be a pity. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiaohei's luck was obviously good. It didn't take long for Ling Chuan to return. After noticing that Ling Chuan returned to the house and didn't come out for a while, Xiaohei informed Bailey Hongzhuang. I think Ling Chuan looks quite disappointed. He probably won't go out again today. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up slightly, and the corners of her lips raised a sly smile. In that case, let's go to the resource room to take a look. The location of the Xianqing sect's resource room was not difficult to find. Bailey Hongzhuang spent a little time to find it. Even though many disciples were looking for her now, there were still a lot of people in the resource room, and they were shuttling back and forth. Master, there are so many people here. I'm afraid it's not easy for us to do it. Xiaohei looked around. Wanting to do something to the resource room under the eyes of so many people was simply courting death. Don't worry, let's look around now. Bailey Hongzhuang was calm. No matter when, the resource room was always the most lively place in the sect. She had already expected this to happen, but she would have to think of a way to deal with it after she understood the situation. As there were many cultivators heading to the resource room, Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance did not attract much attention. She wandered around inside. What she was interested in was not the resources of each disciple, but the natural treasures that could be exchanged with points. These things were often the most precious. Even if they couldn't take much, it would definitely be beneficial to everyone's strength. As she wandered around, many cultivators would come here to check the points required for the items they wanted to exchange. However, most of them could only sigh at their inadequacy. Apart from a few extremely outstanding disciples, it was not easy for others to gather enough points. After understanding the situation in the resource room, Bailey Hongzhuang came up with a plan. The effect of the disguise pill changed. Bailey Hongzhuang changed into the face of one of the cultivators he had seen before. Then, she quickly ran towards the front of the resource room. Everyone present could easily tell that he was in a state of extreme urgency. Noticing her actions, a cultivator who knew her couldn't help but ask, "What are you going to do in such a hurry?" Bailey Hongzhuang stopped. There was a trace of panic and nervousness on her face. She smiled and said, "Nothing, I just found that I left something behind, so I have to go back to get it." Chapter 64:25. Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. She scratched her head and said, "I was wrong. I left the things over there. I still have to look for it. I won't say more." As soon as her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't seem to want to delay for a second. She rushed forward in a hurry. On the one hand, she didn't want to be discovered by everyone. On the other hand, She couldn't wait to be perfectly presented by her. As Bailey Hongzhuang left, the disciple couldn't help but follow. The surrounding cultivators who noticed this scene felt that this matter was a bit strange. They didn't dare to delay and quickly rushed forward, afraid that they would miss some good news. Do you think he heard some news? I won't believe such a lame reason like leaving something behind. Now everyone is looking for Bailey Hongzhuang. I heard that as long as you can find Bailey Hongzhuang, you can become an inner disciple. Could he be? No matter what it is, I'll follow and take a look first. Once the crowd effect was produced, many disciples hurriedly followed, afraid that they would miss it if they were late. Some cultivators who didn't understand what was going on also followed after seeing this scene. With such a big movement, something must have happened. Just as a group of cultivators rushed out, Xiaohei took the opportunity to stuff the resources in the resource room into her Qingquan bag. Master's really smart. She actually came up with this method to attract others away. Even the elder in the resource room couldn't help but go and take a look. Xiaohei was secretly delighted. Usually, no matter what happened, the elder in the resource room would not leave. It was just that the commotion caused by her master was too big, so even the elder couldn't help but go and take a look. Now, almost everyone in the Xianqing sect wanted to see the real face of Bailey Hongzhuang. They wanted to know how an abandoned person could cause such a big trouble in the Xianqing sect. Xiaohei's movements were very fast. Her master had already told her before she left. Although this method could attract a certain number of people away, it wouldn't attract them for too long. It wouldn't be long before these people came back. Therefore, he couldn't be greedy. He should pick up the good stuff and stop while he was ahead. Xiaohei also understood that this matter was not a joke. Therefore, she quickly put some precious heavenly treasures into her Qingquan bag and quickly left the resource room. Not long after Xiaohei left, the elder returned to the resource room. Xiaohei quietly heaved a sigh of relief when it sensed the terrifying aura. Fortunately, it had left in time. Otherwise, with this elder's ability, it was very likely that he would have discovered its existence. Bailey Hongzhuang tried her best to put some distance between herself and the person behind her. Only then did she find a corner and change back to Ling Chuan's face. While the other party wasn't paying attention, she slowly walked back to the spirit field. Previously, she and Xiaohei had already agreed to meet at the spirit field. Moreover, she was wearing Ling Chuan's face, so it was normal for her to appear here. However, as Bailey Hongzhuang waited longer and longer, she could not help but frown. Why isn't Xiaohei back yet? Could it be that she was too greedy and was discovered? When she thought of this possibility, her heart sank. Before she left, she had already reminded Xiaohei not to be greedy. She felt that Xiaohei had realized the seriousness of the matter and shouldn't be so greedy. Chapter 64:26. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly rushed in the direction of the resource room. Her heart was getting more and more anxious. Once Xiaohei fell into the hands of the Xianqing sect, it would be really bad. Guosheng didn't kill them directly because he wanted to lure Beichun and the others here. However, the other elders and even the sect leader didn't have such scruples. Perhaps they would directly take Xiaohei's life. Master, let's go. Bailey Hongzhuang walked all the way and noticed that Xiaohei's aura was getting closer and closer to her. Suddenly, her heart was filled with joy. Then, she noticed Xiaohei's aura. However, behind Xiaohei, there was a terrifying aura that was rapidly approaching. He is locked onto my aura. He will be here soon. Xiaohei's voice was hurried as she said nervously. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand and immediately put Xiaohei into the Chaos Ring. As a divine artifact, the Chaos Ring's ability to hide one's aura could be said to be extremely terrifying. She believed that even the elders of the Xianqing sect wouldn't be able to distinguish it. She still remembered that she had asked her grandmother before. Her grandmother also praised the Chaos Ring. She said that the Chaos Ring was stronger than most immortal artifacts. As long as one hid inside, most people wouldn't be able to find their hidden aura. After Elder Duan returned to the resource room, the first thing he found was that some of the precious treasures inside had disappeared. When he discovered this, he suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He had been guarding the resource room for so many years, and such a thing had never happened. He had only left for a short while, and such a thing had happened. After thinking about it for a moment, he realized that the previous situation was completely a diversion to the east and attack in the west. The reason why Bailey Hongzhuang was able to deceive so many people was because she could disguise herself. Elder Duan quickly understood the problem. It was absolutely impossible for such a big living person to disappear into thin air in the Xianqing sect. The reason why they hadn't found Bailey Hongzhuang for so long was that she was mixed in with so many disciples. If that was the case, things would be troublesome. There were countless disciples in the entire Xianqing sect. There were 13 peaks of the Xianqing sect, and there were many disciples under each peak. Bailey Hongzhuang could have changed into any one of them. Even if they checked in front, Bailey Hongzhuang could have changed into someone else later. This was really a big problem. Elder Duan quickly walked out of the resource room, and his aura spread out. And he had only left for a short period of time. And even if Bailey Hongzhuang's speed was fast, it was impossible for her to disappear into the surroundings. Therefore, Elder Duan quickly scanned the auras in the surroundings. Finally, his aura locked onto a demon beast. According to the water prison disciple, Bailey Hongzhuang was caught together with her contract beast. Although many disciples had their own contracted beasts, the fact that this contracted beast appeared near the resource room and its owner was not by its side was very suspicious. After Bailey Hongzhuang put Xiaohei into the chaos ring, she turned around and walked forward. She could feel the other party's aura approaching quickly. However, if she disappeared now, the other party would definitely dig 3 feet into the ground to check for any abnormalities in the vicinity. Once she did this, the chaos ring was very likely to be discovered. So even if it was extremely dangerous, she could only give it a try. Chapter 64:27. Elder Duan had rushed over as soon as he had locked onto Xiaohei's aura. However, just as he was getting closer to Xiaohei, he realized that the aura had disappeared into thin air. Elder Duan could not help but feel shocked when he realized this. A look of astonishment flashed across his face. Regardless of whether it was a human or a contracted beast, their aura could not possibly disappear into thin air. However, no matter how hard he tried to sense it, he could not sense that the other party's aura had really disappeared. How could this be? Elder Duan carried his suspicions as he quickly made his way to the spot where Xiaohei's aura had disappeared. Everything around him looked normal, and there was nothing out of the ordinary. Could it be that there's some kind of treasure that can conceal one's aura perfectly? A thought flashed across his mind, but he did not have time to think about it in detail. He quickly began to survey his surroundings. If this little fellow was really Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beast, it must be here to meet up with its master. The fact that the contracted beast's aura had disappeared here meant that its master was most likely nearby. Bailey Hongzhuang walked towards the spirit field at a normal speed. She was so nervous that she could hear her own heartbeat. She could sense the aura scanning her from behind. Even though her heart was extremely nervous, her expression remained very calm. She must appear calm at a time like this. She must not give herself away at all. Otherwise, once she is discovered, she would be consigned to eternal damnation. Elder Duan scanned the auras around him. When he realized that the contracted beast's aura was nowhere to be found, he frowned. If he could use this opportunity to capture Bailey Hongzhuang, it would be a great achievement for him. However, if he could not capture the other party, he would have to bear the consequences of losing the item. This would cause him to lose face as well. This Guosheng really knows how to stir up trouble. Since we've captured him, we should have just dealt with him. Why did he have to stir up trouble like this? How troublesome. Elder Duan's face was full of misfortune, and he could not help but feel gloomy. Just then, Elder Duan sensed an aura not too far away, and a sense of suspicion appeared in his eyes. Ling Chuan. Bailey Hongzhuang froze when she heard the voice behind her. She didn't expect to be discovered. She slowly turned her head and pretended to be surprised. She respectfully bowed and said, "Greetings, Elder Duan." Elder Duan nodded slightly, and carefully looked at Ling Chuan, as if trying to find some clues from his expression. Ling Chuan, why are you here? Replying, Elder, I made a huge mistake and was punished to plant the spiritual fields. Just now, I heard that someone had found traces of Bailey Hongzhuang. I rushed over, thinking that if I could catch her, then I would be able to atone for my crime. But when I went there, I didn't find any trace of Bailey Hongzhuang, so I came back. Hearing this, Elder Duan nodded slightly. This explanation was quite reasonable. Bailey Hongzhuang stood quietly on the spot. She could feel Elder Duan's aura constantly scanning her, as if he was trying to see through her disguise. Sweat slowly seeped out of her palms as she prepared herself to run away at any time. She did not know if Elder Duan would discover her. If he did, she must seize the opportunity to escape as quickly as possible. Perhaps she would still have a chance of survival. Chapter 64:28. Elder Duan could not see anything unusual about Ling Chuan's face. Ling Chuan was Guosheng's disciple to begin with, so he was not very familiar with him. If it had not been for the fact that this incident had blown up, he would not have even heard of Ling Chuan's name. Therefore, he could not determine whether this was the real Ling Chuan by observing his face. If this person was really Ling Chuan, would he not become a laughingstock if he were to capture him? He does not want to embarrass himself like Guosheng. Are you planning to go back? Elder Duan asked without batting an eyelid. Bailey Hongzhuang gently nodded. Yes, Elder Duan. Coincidentally, I was thinking of taking a look at the spirit farm. I'll go with you. Elder Duan smiled and followed beside Bailey Hongzhuang. Clearly, he had no intention of leaving. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression changed slightly. It was obvious that Elder Duan's suspicions had not disappeared, and he still wanted to observe her properly. If she bumped into Ling Chuan along the way, it would be no different from being caught red-handed. By then, she would not be able to escape even if she wanted to. Furthermore, Elder Duan was right next to her. If she dared to run away, it would be no different from exposing her identity. Hence, the only thing she could do now was to pray that Ling Chuan would stay in the house and that they would not bump into each other. Even though countless thoughts flashed across Bailey Hongzhuang's heart anxiously, she pretended as if nothing had happened. She wanted to pretend that she was the real Ling Chuan, and she must not reveal any clues. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly followed Elder Duan, but realized that the latter had slowed down on purpose, as if he was following her. Instantly, she understood that Elder Duan was testing her to see if she knew the location of the spirit farm. After all, an outsider cultivator might not know the location. However, Bailey Hongzhuang happened to have been to the spirit farm before, so this was not a problem for her. Elder Duan watched as Bailey Hongzhuang walked towards the spirit farm with great familiarity, and the suspicion in his heart slowly disappeared. Even though he could not figure out why the aura had disappeared out of the blue, the person before him was undoubtedly Ling Chuan. Elder Duan, which spirit farm would you like to visit? Bailey Hongzhuang asked politely and humbly. Elder Duan casually looked around. I'm just taking a look around. You may go back first. Bailey Hongzhuang joined her fists and said, Elder Duan, I'll go back first. Go. Slowly turning around, Bailey Hongzhuang's face did not let down her guard. This was because she realized that Elder Duan had not left yet, and she was only 100 meters away from Ling Chuan's house. Based on the situation before her, it was obvious that Elder Duan did not leave even after she entered the room. She clearly knew that Ling Chuan had returned to the house earlier, so he should still be in the house now. Ling Chuan would definitely be noticed Ling Chuan's Duan if she made any noise. Elder Duan would notice her as well. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was filled with even more complicated feelings when she sensed the unintentional gaze behind her. She stared at the house that was getting closer and closer, and her body slowly tensed up. She only had one chance left. Once she entered the house, she must not let Ling Chuan make any noise. Otherwise, it would be the beginning of a disaster. Creak. After the door opened, Bailey Hongzhuang's figure flashed, quickly entering the room. Chapter 64:29. Ling Chuan was resting in his room. When he heard the commotion outside the door, he rose to his feet to take a look. However, When he saw the face that was exactly the same as his expression immediately turned into one of horror. "You are." Before Ling Chuan could finish a sentence, Bailey Hongzhuang stepped forward and covered his mouth with one hand. MMM. Ling Chuan reached out his hand in an attempt to resist. He could sense that the other party's powers were not any more powerful than his own. Most importantly, he could smell a familiar scent. He was certain that the person before him was Bailey Hongzhuang. "Don't speak. Once we're discovered, both of us will suffer." Bailey Hongzhuang lowered her voice and said. But Ling Chuan didn't care at all, directly punching Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly blocked the attack with one hand and released Ling Chuan's mouth with her right hand. "You!" In that short moment, Bailey Hongzhuang charged forward and covered Ling Chuan's mouth once again. At the same time, she stuffed a pill into his mouth. In the blink of an eye, Ling Chuan never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would use this move. When he thought about how Elder Guo's poison had yet to be cured, his heart turned cold. This woman's methods of poisoning were extremely terrifying. Now that she has poisoned him as well, wouldn't it be difficult for him to escape this calamity? At that moment, Ling Chuan decided to fight it out with Bailey Hongzhuang. His life was already at risk anyway. Even if he were to die, he would drag Bailey Hongzhuang down with him. He could not allow Bailey Hongzhuang to escape. Most importantly, the face before him was exactly the same. Even he could not tell the difference. Perhaps after Bailey Hongzhuang kills him, she would use his identity to continue living. A chill ran down his spine at the thought of this. His heart had never felt so cold before. However, just as he was about to resist, he realized that his body had lost all its strength. His face instantly turned pale. Seeing that Ling Chuan had finally stopped, Bailey Hongzhuang let out a sigh of relief. She had finally restrained this guy. Otherwise, Ling Chuan was also at the Radiant Sun realm. If they really fought, even if she won, she would definitely cause a huge commotion and be discovered by Elder Duan. "Are you stupid?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Ling Chuan speechlessly. She couldn't tell that this guy was so loyal to the Xianqing sect. "You were involved in my escape earlier. If I appear here again now, do you think they will believe that you are innocent or that you are with me?" Her clear and cold voice was as gentle as water, but it contained a kind of power that made people feel at ease. "I'll tell you the truth. I robbed the resource room today, and Elder Duan of the resource room is outside right now. If he finds out that we're together, you're dead." Ling Chuan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in horror and felt like he was going crazy. This woman was simply too terrifying. First, she blew up Changmei Peak. Elder Guo and Medicine Master Ji had yet to cure their poison. Now, she actually went to the resource room. What kind of place was the resource room? No matter what they obtained, it would be an extremely precious cultivation resource. What he found most unbelievable was that Bailey Hongzhuang was actually able to take things out of the resource room. This was too terrifying. How many people had tried to rob the resource room? None of them had succeeded. Bailey Hongzhuang, an abandoned person, was actually able to do this. It was simply like a dream. Chapter 6430. If you don't tell me, I can still share some cultivation resources with you. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly, and a faint smile appeared on her lips. "Didn't you join the sect for cultivation resources? You're just a disciple planting spiritual fields now. If you want to exchange them for precious cultivation resources, who knows how many acres of fields you'll have to plant. You should think carefully about this debt." Ling Chuan's expression changed slightly. In fact, after discovering that Bailey Hongzhuang didn't kill him immediately, he felt a little relieved. This proved that she didn't intend to kill him and replace him to stay in Xianqing's sect. Just like when he was in the water prison, Bailey Hongzhuang only knocked him out and didn't take his life. Elder Duan originally turned around to leave after seeing Ling Chuan enter the house. However, not long after Ling Chuan entered the house, he suddenly heard a commotion from inside. Slowly frowning, Elder Duan slowly walked towards the house. Could it be that the problem was still with Ling Chuan? Bailey Hongzhuang was communicating with Ling Chuan when she suddenly heard light footsteps coming from outside. Her expression also changed. Creak. The door was pushed open, and Elder Duan saw the room clearly. Elder Duan, is there a problem with the spiritual fields? Ling Chuan stood up and asked respectfully. Elder Duan looked at Ling Chuan and asked, what happened just now? When I came back just now, I found Chengyu in my house. I was a little curious about why he was here, but then I remembered that we had an appointment yesterday. There are 2 acres of spiritual fields that are about to mature. He brought the seeds to me today. Ling Chuan smiled. Chengyu stood up and bowed respectfully. Greetings, Elder Duan. I see. Elder Duan nodded. I have nothing else to do. I'll go back first. It wasn't until Elder Duan's footsteps were getting farther and farther away that Ling Chuan fell to the ground weakly. Bailey Hongzhuang also breathed a sigh of relief. At that moment, cold sweat had also seeped out of her back. If not for the fact that she had met another cultivator in the spiritual field, she would have been completely exposed. If you promise not to cause any trouble, I'll give you the antidote. How about that? Bailey Hongzhuang sized up Ling Chuan. The effect of this pill was to make a cultivator lose their cultivation for a short period of time. This was given to them by Granny Hua to save their lives at critical moments. However, this pill also needed to be detoxified. Otherwise, one's cultivation would be affected. She didn't have any bad intentions towards Ling Chuan. Although she didn't claim to be a good person, she didn't intend to drag someone she didn't have any enmity with her. Ling Chuan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang helplessly and nodded dejectedly. He was now tied to the same boat as Bailey Hongzhuang. Even if he was unwilling, there was nothing he could do. Just as she had said, once he was discovered, his ending would not be any better than Bailey Hongzhuang. The sect would not allow such a dangerous possibility to exist. They would rather kill him than let him live. Rather than that, he might as well stay here peacefully. Although he had been punished, at least his life was not in danger. Bailey Hongzhuang handed the antidote to Ling Chuan, and he immediately swallowed it. Chapter 64:31. Bailey Hongzhuang sat down in an unrestrained manner. Her face had returned to its original appearance, and a playful smile appeared on her elegant, lotus-like features. I don't want to do anything. If Guosheng had not captured me and brought me here, I would have been happy and carefree in the abandoned immortal forest. Ling Chuan stared suspiciously at Bailey Hongzhuang. Did you really kill Guoshaojia? Would you believe me if I told you that I didn't kill him? Bailey Hongzhuang asked in return. Ling Chuan's face was filled with suspicion. Clearly, he did not believe her. Eldergu's anger was not fake. If it had not been for Guoshaojia's incident, he would not have done such a thing. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged when she noticed Ling Chuan's expression. Anyway, I didn't kill him. It's up to you whether you believe me or not. Ling Chuan began to believe her when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's calm expression. After all, based on Bailey Hongzhuang's current situation, it would not be a big deal even if she were to admit it. Besides, he and she were already in the same boat. He would never tell on her. Master, how are you? Xiaohe had been worried ever since it had hidden itself in the Chaos Ring. It did not know if Elder Duan had discovered its master. However, it did not dare to rush out, so it could only wait for the result inside. Every minute and second was extremely unbearable for it. It was so worried that it was about to go crazy. Don't worry, everything's fine now. Just as Xiaohe was at a loss for what to do, Bailey Hongzhuang's gentle voice chimed in. Xiaohe heaved a sigh of relief when it heard this heavenly voice. It lay limply on the ground and felt completely at ease. Xiaohe then tossed the chaos ring into the air. However, it was completely stunned when it saw Ling Chuan. Master, he. Ling Chuan looked at Xiaohe when he heard that. He was a little surprised when he saw how soft and cute it was. Why are you so small? Xiaohe's expression changed slightly. She looked at Ling Chuan in confusion, then looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Master, this, Bailey Hongzhuang patted Xiaohe's little head and smiled faintly. Don't worry, we're on the same side now. Xiaohe looked at Ling Chuan in surprise. Although she didn't understand what was going on, it was obvious that the situation was no longer dangerous. What did you get from the resource room? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Xiaohe with a smile. Although the previous scene was very dangerous, it was still worth it. Master, I listened to you and couldn't be greedy, so I didn't stay in there for long. I only took a few things and came out. Ling Chuan was also very curious. He knew very well how many treasures there were in the resource room. Every time he went to collect cultivation resources, he couldn't help but go and take a look. However, those precious cultivation resources were simply too expensive to exchange for points. Even when he was guarding the water prison, it was an astronomical figure. Now that he was being punished to plant the spirit farm, he had basically given up on this idea. However, these things that they thought were impossible to obtain had been taken back by Bailey Hongzhuang, just like that. This was really infuriating. This. Xiaohei mumbled to herself as she took out the item that she had retrieved from the resource room. 10,000-year-old ice ginseng. Chapter 6432. Although the 10,000-year-old ice ginseng was usually kept in the resource room, everyone knew that it was just there for show. It was impossible to exchange for it. The 10,000-year-old ice ginseng was extremely precious. Even if everyone wanted to exchange for it, they would only exchange for the 10,000-year-old ice ginseng's whiskers. Even if it was just a whisker, the number of points required was extremely shocking. However, this guy actually took out the entire 10,000-year-old ice ginseng. At that moment, Ling Chuan also understood why Elder Duan's expression was so terrifying. If it were him, he would also be anxious to death after losing such an important treasure. He probably wouldn't be able to explain it to the sect leader. He recalled that Xiaohei said that Bailey Hongzhuang reminded it not to be greedy. Was this not greedy? Putting everything else aside, just this 10,000-year-old ice ginseng alone was worth everything. Just as Ling Chuan was thinking, Xiaohei didn't stop moving. It took out the treasures one by one. In fact, it didn't know the uses of many heaven and earth treasures. It just looked at the ones that required the most points and took them back. I only took a total of 5 items. Xiaohei pursed its lips. There wasn't enough time, and it affected its performance. When it left, it looked at the many items in the resource room and was reluctant to part with them. How great would it be if it could take all of these items away? Ling Chuan looked at the 5 items in front of him. Each of them was extremely precious. The other 4 items weren't much worse than the 10,000-year-old ice ginseng. These things were things that they had been dreaming about even in their dreams. Not only did Xiaohei bring back so many items, but it still felt that the items were too little. Isn't your appetite a little too big? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the 5 items in front of her, and her eyes lit up. She studied medicine with her mother-in-law all day long and had some understanding of these treasures. Therefore, when Xiaohei took them out, she knew the value of these items. Xiaohei, you have a good eye? These things are all very good, Bailey Hongzhuang praised with a smile. Xiaohei, who was feeling a little regretful at first, felt her gloominess disappear after hearing her master's praise. Her eyes lit up with anticipation as she asked, "Really?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "Of course it's true. Even your mother-in-law would praise you if she saw these things, let alone me." Xiaohei giggled at the side. Being praised by his master was the happiest thing in his life. "Ling Chuan, which one do you like?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Ling Chuan. If it wasn't for Ling Chuan, she would have been exposed. Naturally, none of these things would belong to her. Since she said that she would give Ling Chuan a share, she naturally wouldn't go back on her words. As Bailey Hongzhuang spoke, Ling Chuan was stunned. Then, a look of disbelief surfaced in his eyes. His voice trembled with excitement as he asked, "You're saying that I can choose one item from here?" "Of course." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled gently. Her eyes were as bright as stars. "Choose for yourself." Ling Chuan felt an indescribable sense of happiness spread through his heart. Usually, it would be an extravagant hope to be able to obtain even a small portion of these items. Now, he could actually obtain the entire set. Chapter 6433. I'll take this. Ling Chuan pointed to the purple lotus spirit leaf at the side. The most precious of all was the 10,000-year-old ice ginseng. He naturally couldn't take it away directly. However, the purple lotus spirit leaf was also an extremely precious treasure. Countless cultivators yearned to have it. All right, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and handed the purple lotus spirit leaf to Ling Chuan with a faint smile. Ling Chuan still felt like he was in a dream when he received the purple lotus spirit leaf. He only felt that everything in front of him was too unreal. Then what are you going to do next? After carefully putting away the purple lotus spirit leaf, Ling Chuan asked seriously. At this moment, he no longer had any hostility towards Bailey Hongzhuang. In fact, it was Elder Gua who made the first move. Bailey Hongzhuang was just responding passively from the beginning to the end. Although he had only known Bailey Hongzhuang for a short time, in this short period of time, he already knew that the other party was a very generous and loyal person. If it was an ordinary person, even if they were good brothers, they would not care about feelings in the face of such a treasure. However, Bailey Hongzhuang gave such a precious treasure to him just because she felt guilty. How many people could do this? Bailey Hongzhuang's face revealed a thoughtful expression. At present, she had not thought of a way to leave. Now that the entire Xianqing sect is looking for me, it won't be easy for me to leave. Bailey Hongzhuang was a little helpless. She also knew that every day she stayed here, Beiqian and the rest would be more worried. If her judgment was correct, Beiqian and the rest should be near the immortal region soon. Guosheng was definitely not a good person. Even if he had not been cured, the plan must have been set up. Once Beiqian and the rest came, there would be trouble. Do you know what danger it is for abandoned people to barge into the immortal region without an identity card? Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly asked. Ling Chuan's expression turned cold. If they barge into the immortal region, it will be dangerous. The restriction on the entrance to the immortal domain was extremely powerful. As long as one was not a cultivator from the immortal domain, it would be impossible to break through. I heard that there was once an abandoned person who wanted to barge in directly, but he was destroyed by the restrictive spell. So scary? Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly taken aback. Although she had already guessed that it would be difficult to enter the immortal domain, the degree of difficulty seemed to be even more terrifying than she had imagined. Anyway, it's really scary to barge in. Could it be that your friend is planning to save you? Ling Chuan was also very smart. Just by looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, he had already guessed it. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, her pretty face filled with worry. It seems like I really have to think of a way to leave this place. Right now, everyone is looking for you. Even if you know how to disguise yourself, I'm afraid it will be very difficult for you to leave. Ling Chuan said with difficulty. That's right. Can you take Xiaohei with you and leave? Bailey Hongzhuang pointed at the extremely small Xiaohei. Ling Chuan glanced at Xiaohei and nodded. Right now, many people are guarding outside the sect. Even if I go, it won't be strange. It won't be difficult to take it out, but what's the use of it? You won't be able to leave. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up. You don't have to worry about that. As long as you can take Xiaohei with you, it'll be fine. Chapter 64-34. Even though Ling Chuan's heart was full of doubts, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's confident appearance, he inexplicably felt at ease. This woman's ability was obviously stronger than all of them thought. In fact, there was no one else who could hide in Xianqing sect for so long without being discovered except for Bailey Hongzhuang. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Ling Chuan were talking, Xianqing sect was in an uproar. When the disciples who planted the spirit fruits in the spirit fields returned, they found that all the fruits and vegetables they planted had been plucked. What should we do? How could these fruits and vegetables be plucked out of nowhere? How should I explain this? The fruits in your spirit fields are gone too. All the ripe fruits in my spirit fields are gone. This is really over. It's over, it's over. Wails continued to resound. But after everyone found out that it wasn't only their spirit fields that were stolen, they felt more at ease. In this way, even if they were punished, it wouldn't be just one person. In the meeting hall, Xianqing sect master listened to the elder's report with a livid expression. In that case, Bailey Hongzhuang is still in our Xianqing sect and has taken away all the ripe fruits and vegetables in the spirit fields? Sect master, that's true. The great elder braced himself and replied. Even though he was so far away, he could clearly feel the sect master's low pressure. So, are you all a bunch of trash? The sect master flew into a rage. How many days has it been since the incident in the water prison? You can't even find an abandoned person. All the elders' hearts trembled. They lowered their heads and didn't dare to say anything. They just gave the order to a group of disciples. After all, she was just an abandoned person. They only felt that there was no need for them to do anything. However, they didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be so cunning. So many disciples collectively searched for her, but they couldn't find her. She even dared to take away the fruits in the spirit fields. Sect Master, we will definitely speed up and find Bailey Hongzhuang. Abandoned people are still abandoned people. Although the things in the spirit fields are a bit of a pity, they aren't very important things. Since she cares so much about these petty profits, we can also pay more attention in this regard. The matter of the spiritual field is indeed small, but she's slapping the face of our Xianqing sect. The sect leader was still angry. An abandoned person has already caused chaos in our Xianqing sect. What will others think of our Xianqing sect? What a joke. At that moment, Elder Duan arrived. Elder Duan, why are you only here now? One of the elders asked. Elder Duan's expression was a little ugly as he looked nervously at the sect leader. He was constantly thinking about how he should say this. Elder Duan, have you heard about the theft of the spirit fields? Fortunately, this woman's vision is rather low. She only knows how to steal the spiritual fields. The good stuff is all in the resource room. Another elder chuckled and said, how powerful are the guards of the resource room? How could she possibly break in? Elder Duan, who is already very conflicted, looked even uglier after hearing everyone's words. These guys seemed to have already expected something would happen and touched on the pot that didn't boil. The sect master didn't care too much at first, but when he noticed Elder Duan's expression, his eyes gradually changed. Chapter 64:35. As soon as the sect leader finished speaking, everyone present was stunned and turned to look at Elder Duan. Elder Duan felt an immense pressure when he was faced with the puzzled gazes. His back was soon drenched in cold sweat. 5 treasures had been stolen from the resource room this time, and they were the most precious top-grade treasures. He had already searched the surroundings as fast as he could, but he did not find anyone. Therefore, he could only take on this big trouble himself. Something has indeed happened in the resource room. Elder Duan lowered his head and said in shame. The entire meeting hall fell silent as soon as he said that. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Numerous astonished and shocked gazes landed on Elder Duan. The usually calm elders no longer cared about their image at this moment, and all of them widened their eyes. Elder Duan, is what you said true? The resource room has always been guarded very strictly. I heard that Bailey Hongzhuang has not even broken through to the glorious sun state. How could she have possibly stolen something right under your nose? Elder Duan felt even more humiliated when he was faced with the crowd's questions. He could not understand why he had been so obsessed today that he had followed the group of disciples to check out the situation out of curiosity. Furthermore, he could not understand how Bailey Hongzhuang, an abandoned person who had never seen the world, could have managed to grasp the timing so well. She had not been greedy when faced with so many treasures and had escaped immediately after taking some. It sounded simple, but most cultivators would not be able to do that. Elder Duan, what's going on? The sect leader regained his rationality in his anger. It was useless to be angry now. Most importantly, he was curious about how Bailey Hongzhuang had managed to do that. Even the disciples in their sect could not have done something like that. Under the sect leader's pressurizing gaze, Elder Duan slowly explained everything that had happened. I never thought that something like this would happen after leaving for such a short while. Elder Duan felt ashamed and guilty. He had been guarding the resource room for so many years, and this was the first time something like this had happened. Just thinking about it made him feel gloomy. However, after everyone heard all this, their hearts became even more complicated. From the looks of it, this Bailey Hongzhuang is quite smart. The sect leader had a complicated look on his face. Initially, he had treated her as a small fry and did not take her to heart. However, after understanding everything that Bailey Hongzhuang had done, he began to feel that this woman had many shining points. If it was their sect's disciples who were captured, it would be impossible for them to do this. Not to mention breaking into the resource room, It was impossible not to be discovered. However, Bailey Hongzhuang acted as if it was nothing and was as carefree as a fish swimming in the water. All the elders nodded. In fact, they had been thinking about this for the past 2 days. If their disciples also had such strength, then they would definitely be able to obtain first place in the sect competition. Such an outstanding disciple was actually an abandoned person. It was simply a reckless waste of God's gift. This girl is indeed very powerful. If not, Eldegwa's grandson would not have fallen in her hands. The first elder said in a deep voice. Chapter 64:36. In response to the head, Eldegwa's life has been saved, but his paralysis problem is very serious. I specifically went to inquire before coming, and it said that he's still in the process of detoxifying the poison. He already has a direction, and I believe that he should be able to detoxify the poison in a short period of time. Second elder spoke. The head nodded slightly. That's good. After a long while, the sect head finally spoke. No matter if that Bailey Hongzhuang has 3 heads and 6 arms or what, we must find her today. We absolutely can't let her continue to cause trouble like this. Everyone's hearts trembled as soon as these words were spoken, and they all nodded in agreement. A trace of complexity surfaced in his dark eyes as the head sighed faintly. He'd originally thought that Bailey Hongzhuang was a promising talent. Although he was very displeased by what he'd done, he'd always cherished geniuses. However, the enmity between Eldegwa and Bailey Hongzhuang ran so deep that if he left Bailey Hongzhuang behind, he'd be letting Eldegwa down. Between the two, Eldegwa was naturally more important. The various elders were all smart people, not to mention the head. Even they had thoughts of cherishing talent. If such an intelligent girl were to stay in the Xianqing sect, she'd likely quickly become the most outstanding disciple in the inner sect. If it wasn't for the first elder's words reminding the head, the elders would have already spoken these words. The Hall of Healing. The Hall of Healing was undoubtedly bustling with activity. Many alchemists were shuttling back and forth inside, all of them looking very distressed. They were all trying their best to think of how to detoxify this poison. This poison is truly strange. We've already tried many methods. Even though it's been alleviated somewhat, we're still unable to completely detoxify it. In my opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang's master must be an expert. This kind of poison isn't something that an ordinary alchemist can concoct. Perhaps it's a very powerful poison master. I also think so. Eldegwa is usually so arrogant, but this time he's really capsized in the gutter. When the head arrived at the Hall of Healing and saw this scene, his already irritated heart became even more irritated when he heard these words. Look at what you've done. The sect leader looked at Guosheng angrily. In fact, he had heard of Guosheng's actions over the years. If he didn't cause any big trouble, it wouldn't be a big deal, but he didn't expect that he would cause such a troublesome matter. Hasn't Guoshaojia caused enough trouble over the years? Now, you've caused even more trouble than him. Sensing the sect master's terrifying rage, Guosheng's face paled. He wanted to explain, but his body was paralyzed, and he couldn't even say a word. He could only stare anxiously. You can think about how to apologize after you recover. The sect master flicked his sleeve and said, Since Chang Mei Peak has already disappeared, you don't have to be the main elder anymore. Hearing this, Guosheng's heart also panicked. He had been a main elder for so many years and had long since gotten used to all of this. Now that he was stripped of his status as the main elder, how could he still have the face to see others? Woo-woo. However, no matter how hard Guosheng tried to speak, he could only produce a blurry silhouette. He could not utter a single word. Chapter 64:37. It's really blown up now. Ling Chuan stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in shock. Even though he already knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had robbed the resource room, he also knew that it would be very scary if this matter were to blow up. However, he never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would also rob the spirit fields as well. Why did you rob so many spirit fields, but you didn't do anything to mine? I didn't even do anything to this area. I've already tricked you previously, so I can't keep tricking you. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Previously, Ling Chuan had already caught the attention of the elders because of the water prison incident. If the spirit fields were to be robbed, it would be the second time he had caught everyone's attention. This way, Ling Chuan would most likely be the center of attention. Hence, it wasn't just Ling Chuan's spirit fields that she didn't do anything to this area. If all the other spirit fields were to be robbed, and only Ling Chuan's spirit fields remained unscathed, wouldn't that be akin to revealing 300 tales of silver here? Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Ling Chuan chuckled softly. I didn't think that you would be so thoughtful. It's all right. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was casual. Can you take Xiao He and leave now? Ling Chuan thought for a moment before nodding. The entire sect is in a mess now. The sect master has ordered us to find you today, so I think that we really have to hurry up. I'll try to see if I can take this opportunity to send Xiao He out. Otherwise, once the elders and the sect master come to investigate, I'm afraid that you won't be able to escape no matter how good your disguise is. Our sect master is very powerful, so we definitely can't take this risk. Looking at Ling Chuan's dignified appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood. All right, let's give it a try now. But if I take Xiao He out, what about you? Ling Chuan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang worriedly. It's not safe for you to stay here. Don't worry about me. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand. As long as I can bring Xiao He back, I can return. All right then. As Ling Chuan walked out of the house, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately entered the chaos ring. Xiao He hid the chaos ring in her hair and slowly walked out of the house. Ling Chuan stretched out his hand and said, "Come on up." Xiao He leaped up Ling Chuan's arm and ran into his arms. Her white fur and white clothes blended together, and no one noticed her. After looking around, Ling Chuan quickly rushed towards the main gate of the sect. Normally, there would always be restrictions placed on the main gate of the sect. If he wanted to leave, he would need the permission of the elders. However, because the recent commotion was too big, many disciples were already waiting outside the gate. As long as he took the opportunity to blend in with these disciples, he would be able to take the opportunity to release Xiao He. As for the rest, he could not do it for the time being. Along the way, Ling Chuan found that almost everyone was talking about the theft of the resource room. It was clearly an extremely daring thing to do, but now everyone only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was really too powerful. Her ability was even stronger than that of the inner disciples. She could be said to be the role model of the inner disciples. Seeing that the elders had not appeared, Ling Chuan heaved a sigh of relief. At least he still had a chance. As he got closer and closer to the main gate, he gradually relaxed. As long as he could release Xiao He, that would be enough. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. Greetings, Sect Master. Greetings, Sect Master. Chapter 64:38. Ling Chuan's heart skipped a beat. He was so unlucky to meet the Sect Master as soon as he arrived. As soon as he turned around, sure enough, the Sect Master's figure appeared in his line of sight. However, compared to his usual indifference, the Sect Master had a hint of anger. The serious aura exuding from his body made people not dare to approach him at all. Greetings, Sect Master. Ling Chuan bowed. The Sect Master's gaze swept across the group of disciples in front of him. Elder Daxiang said beside him, Sect Master, these disciples are guarding outside the gate to prevent Bailey Hongzhuang from leaving. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang may have disguised herself as anyone from our Xianqing sect. Before I came, did any disciples leave here? Hearing this, all the disciples were shocked. They finally understood why Bailey Hongzhuang had not been discovered. Everyone couldn't help but look around. They didn't know if Bailey Hongzhuang would be standing beside them. Now, the Great Elder, and I will confirm the aura of each disciple one by one. All the disciples will gather to one side. The disciples who have been confirmed will stand on the other side to prevent others from taking advantage of the situation. Ling Chuan's heart trembled. He never thought that the Sect Master would make such a decision. It was a huge project to screen all the disciples one by one. It could be seen that Bailey Hongzhuang's actions had really angered the Sect Master. Usually, the Sect Master would rarely appear, let alone check the aura of the disciples one by one. Bailey Hongzhuang was not here, but under such a check, the existence of Bailey Hongzhuang would be discovered sooner or later. Not only that, Xiao He was still in his arms. If the sect master found out, what should he do? This place was clearly only a few steps away from the door, but he was stopped here. At the moment, he couldn't let Xiao He leave. His every move was under the attention of the people around him. The slightest movement would be noticed. The sect master's expression was deep. According to his judgment, the reason why Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't been recognized for so long was most likely because she had taken the appearance-changing pill. This pill was expensive, but it was also very useful. Even the ordinary elders in the sect might not be able to judge it. Logically speaking, it was impossible for an abandoned person to have this kind of pill. However, thinking about how Bailey Hongzhuang poisoned Eldewa, it could be seen that she must know a very strong pharmacist, so it was not surprising that she had this kind of pill. The sect master and the great elder didn't delay. How many disciples in the entire Xianqing sect? Relying on their judgment, this was definitely a huge task. By the sect masters of the sect masters of disciples. One by one, the disciples were locked on by the head of the sect. Only after they were allowed to pass to the other side did they feel relieved. They curiously looked at the disciples waiting to be checked on the other side, wanting to know if Bailey Hongzhuang would be in the crowd. Ling Chuan's palms were already sweating and his body was tense. Even if he tried his best to not be nervous, he couldn't do it at all. The sect master must know about Xiao He's existence. Once he was discovered, he would be finished. While waiting nervously, the sect master's footsteps also stopped in front of Ling Chuan. "Are you nervous?" The sect master's voice slowly sounded. Ling Chuan was shocked. Everyone's eyes focused on him at this moment. Chapter 64:39. When the great elder saw Ling Chuan's face clearly, he finally understood. "Sect master, this person is the disciple who was drugged in the water prison. You must be nervous because of this." Hearing this, the sect master's gaze softened a little. "So, it's you." Ling Chuan quickly knelt down and said, "Sect master, this disciple was negligent. I will never do it again in the future." The sect master looked at the nervous Ling Chuan indifferently and carefully scanned his aura. After confirming that he was indeed not Bailey Hongzhuang in disguise, he said, "Since you've already received your punishment, there's no need to be nervous. Ling Chuan, why are you still standing here?" The great elder saw Ling Chuan standing there in a daze, not knowing how to move at all. "Ah!" Ling Chuan raised his head blankly. He was already prepared to be discovered. "If you've been checked, go over there. Why are you still here?" Ling Chuan was stunned. After confirming that he did not hear wrongly, he quickly walked to the side, as if he had been pardoned. He did not know why Xiao He was not checked, but this result was too surprising for him. Everyone looked at Ling Chuan's appearance and could not help but laugh. This guy's recent encounter was indeed quite unlucky. This reaction was not strange. It was not until the sect master and great elder checked everyone and found that there was no one that they turned around and left. Ling Chuan heaved a sigh of relief. He had never been so nervous in his life. Outside the immortal region, it said that this Xianqing sect is not far from the entrance of the immortal region. Di Beichen looked ahead, then turned to look at Granny Hua. "Granny, how should we go in?" After knowing the whole story, Granny Hua was the only senior who came this time. According to Senior Yu and the others, it was enough for Granny Hua to come to this place alone. Although everyone was a little surprised, they also understood Granny Hua's ability even more. Ling, and the others also looked at Granny Hua. Even though they had rushed over, it still took them a few days to get here. Fortunately, she could feel that Hongzhuang was alive and well. However, she had been captured by Guosheng, so her life must be very difficult. In the past few days, they could clearly feel Di Beichen's worry. That kind of extremely low pressure made them not dare to speak casually, for fear that it would make Beichen even more uncomfortable. "Leave it to me." Granny Hua's eyes flashed with a cold light. In any case, he came from the immortal domain. Naturally, he has a few good friends. They will still give him some face. Everyone couldn't help but be surprised when they heard this. They knew how difficult it was to enter the celestial realm, and it was even more dangerous to enter the celestial realm from the chaotic celestial realm. However, Granny Hua was actually so calm and was prepared to directly bring them in. It's just that there are too many of you. In my opinion, Beichin should follow me in. The others should wait outside. Granny Hua looked at everyone. She knew that these little guys were very worried about Hong Zhuang. She could feel it along the way. However, the immortal region was not a place that could be entered and exited at will. It would only take a little effort for her to bring Di Beichin in. However, with so many of them, it was too eye-catching. It was impossible for them to enter. Chapter 6440. Seeing that everyone was very sensible, Granny Hua turned her gaze towards Di Beichin and said, "Let's go." Di Beichin immediately followed closely behind Granny Hua. His handsome face could not hide his anxiety and anxiety. Now, he only hoped that he could find Bailey Hongzhuang as soon as possible. As long as he did not see her, he would feel at ease. After Ling Chuan saw that the sect master had left, he looked behind him. Since he was already here, he naturally had to think of a way to send Xiao He out. Otherwise, if he wanted to leave the sect at will after today, he would have to inform the sect master. Most importantly, Bailey Hongzhuang had said that as long as Xiao He could leave, she would be able to leave as well. Even though they had only known each other for a short period of time, he had already regarded Bailey Hongzhuang as a friend. Naturally, he did not wish for her to be in danger. Ling Chuan slowly moved towards the outside at the thought of this. "Xiao He, hurry and leave." Ling Chuan bowed slightly and let Xiao He leave. "We'll meet again if fate wills it." Xiao He did not delay and quickly moved towards the outside while no one was paying attention to her. "Ling Chuan, what are you doing over there?" A disciple could not help but call out when he saw that Ling Chuan had run out of the restrictive spell at the main door. Ling Chuan smiled faintly and said, "I'm going to relieve myself. Since so many of you are standing here, I have no choice but to go outside." Hearing this, the crowd chuckled. The great elder said that those who have been checked should stay where they are in case they have to be checked again when we return. I'm afraid that we'll have to stay here for a long time. Now that the sect master has personally made a move, Bailey Hongzhuang will definitely not be able to escape. What a pity. Why wasn't I the one who caught her? I missed out on a chance to become an inner disciple for no reason. Ling Chuan smiled and chatted cheerfully with the crowd. In his mind, he was thinking about how Bailey Hongzhuang was going to leave this place. Now that he could no longer return, he had no way of informing Bailey Hongzhuang of this news. He could only hope that she would be able to leave this place safely, as she had said. Ling Chuan reached out and touched the spot where Xiao He was just now. He suddenly realized that there was a chinquin pouch on his chest. A trace of doubt appeared on Ling Chuan's face. He took out his Cosmos sack in shock. This was not his Cosmos sack. Could it be that Xiao He had left it there? Opening the chinquin bag, Ling Chuan found some bottles and jars. Taking a closer look, he realized that these bottles and jars were all extremely precious medicines and pills. In addition, he also found a note in the chinquin bag. "So she left it for me." A trace of a smile appeared in Ling Chuan's eyes. "You actually gave me such a precious thing just like that." Now, he only felt that he deserved to be punished to guard the spirit fields. Even though he had more points when he was guarding the water prison, it was definitely not enough to exchange for so many cultivation resources. He was very grateful to Bailey Hongzhuang, but he didn't know if he would have a chance to thank her in the future. So the abandoned people are actually so wealthy. In the future, I definitely can't underestimate the cultivators of the abandoned immortal forest. Xiao He hugged the chaos ring and ran all the way outside. It was not until she had left the Xianqing sect's territory that she heaved a sigh of relief. "Master, we're out." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang emerged from the chaos ring. Looking at the unfamiliar scene in front of her, a smile appeared on her face. We're finally out. Chapter 6441. We can only say that the sect leader is unlucky. Originally, we would have left today and nothing would have happened. However, you wanted to search today? We lost the chance to establish our prestige and lost our face. Bailey Hongzhuang spread out her hands. In fact, she was also a little unwilling. Guosheng was so hateful. She originally wanted to kill Guosheng, but she didn't expect that guy to save her life. However, other than that one opportunity, she didn't have any other opportunities. Therefore, no matter how unwilling she was, there was nothing she could do. Revenge was a dish best served cold. As long as Guosheng was still alive, she would be able to get her revenge sooner or later. Di Beichun followed Granny Hua all the way to the Xianqing sect. The two of them used their speed to the extreme, unwilling to delay for even a second. This was because no one knew what would happen to Hong Zhuang in the next second. "Master, I can sense Xiao He." At this moment, Xiao Bai's voice suddenly sounded. Hearing this voice, Di Beichun's face immediately showed a trace of excitement. "Really? Where is she?" "Just ahead." Xiao Bai pointed ahead with an excited expression. In the next moment, Di Beichun and Granny Hua both sped up and quickly rushed forward. "We're out, but we still have to think about how to leave the immortal region." Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the road ahead, and a thoughtful expression appeared on her face. The inspection of the immortal region was definitely not simple. Moreover, she didn't have an identity card, so naturally, she couldn't openly appear in the sight of the cultivators of the immortal region. Otherwise, once she appeared, she would inevitably cause some trouble. When she first came, she was knocked out and captured. She had no impression of this route at all. Xiao Hei's ability to distinguish directions wasn't very strong, so naturally, she could only follow Bailey Hongzhuang. At this moment, a voice full of surprise sounded. "Hongzhuang." Hearing this familiar voice, Bailey Hongzhuang was stunned for a moment. She even suspected that she had misheard. However, when she turned around and saw that familiar figure, her lotus-like face immediately bloomed with a pleasantly surprised smile. "Beichen Master." Bailey Hongzhuang quickly stepped forward, her voice as light as an oriole's. "You were a step too slow to save me." Granny Hua and Di Beichen were originally very worried about Bailey Hongzhuang. They were afraid that she would suffer in Xianqing sect. However, they didn't expect to see Bailey Hongzhuang walk out as soon as they arrived. "How'd he do it?" Not only Di Beichen, but even Granny Hua was very surprised. Logically speaking, this was simply impossible. "Hongzhuang, are you hurt?" Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang nervously. He didn't have the heart to ask what was going on. He just wanted to know if Hongzhuang had been bullied these days. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and shook her head. "I'm fine. Don't you see that I'm fine now?" Looking at the smiling face in front of them, Di Beichen and Granny Hua were relieved. Hongzhuang's ability was indeed extraordinary. If this kind of thing happened to others, they would have already lost their lives. However, not only was Hongzhuang alive, she also ran out safe and sound. This huge Xianqing sect was simply a decoration. It was useless to her. Chapter 6442. At the same time, Granny Hua was also a little proud. She had always known that Bailey Hongzhuang was very outstanding, but she had never thought that she would be able to escape in such a situation. This kind of ability was not something an ordinary person could have. Hongzhuang was able to do this, which proved her strength. Even if she went to the chaotic immortal realm in the future, she would not have to worry too much. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was chatting with Granny Hua with a smile, she suddenly felt the pressure around her drop. As soon as she looked up, she saw Di Beichen's angry face. "He hit you." Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's white and slender hand. From a slightly slipping sleeve, he saw a red scar. Although the scar had begun to heal, he could still see that it must have been bloody before. Granny Hua's face turned cold when she heard that. She saw Di Beichen roll up Bailey Hongzhuang's sleeve, and the bright red whip scar was shocking. If her arm was like this, then there was no need to mention the scars on her body. In fact, this was what he was most worried about on the way here. Although Hongzhuang had escaped, it was obvious that she had been tortured by Guosheng before. Bailey Hongzhuang rolled down her sleeve and said softly, "Actually, it's nothing. It's almost healed now." At that time, the injury was indeed very serious. However, with her body's current recovery speed, it did not affect her at all. Moreover, she had been seriously injured many times during her daily training. This kind of situation was a common occurrence for her. "Damn it," Di Beichen cursed. His face was terrifyingly gloomy. Ever since Hongzhuang disappeared, He had been blaming himself so much that he was going crazy. He had been wondering why he did not accompany Hong Zhuang. Why did he let her go by the spiritual herbs alone? If he had been with her, perhaps this would not have happened. Granny Hua's face also darkened. An elder of the Xianqing sect dares to treat my disciple like this? I haven't left the abandoned immortal forest for so many years, but these guys' hands are getting longer and longer. In the next moment, a faint light flashed in Granny Hua's eyes. Let's go to the Xianqing sect. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. Go back. Since Guo Sheng dared to attack you, I naturally have to let him know the price of attacking my disciple. Di Beichun held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. Let's go together. Granny, the strength of the Xianqing sect. Bailey Hongzhuang understood her mother-in-law and Beichun's feelings for her. She was also very moved. However, Xianqing sect was also a sect. If they went there alone, in case of danger, she didn't want to involve her mother-in-law. Granny must have her reasons for living in the abandoned immortal forest all these years. If it wasn't for him, Granny probably wouldn't have come to the immortal domain. Sometimes, she even wondered if Granny had enemies in the immortal domain, so she didn't come here. The corner of Granny Hua's lips curled up. It was different from her usual kindness. Instead, it was cold with a trace of killing intent. Even if it was only for a short moment, Bailey Hongzhuang still noticed the difference in her mother-in-law's aura. This was the first time she saw her mother-in-law like this. It's just a small sect. It's nothing. Chapter 6443. Xianqing Sect. As more and more disciples were checked by the sect leader and the great elder, their faces became more and more gloomy. Almost all the disciples had gathered here, and the two of them checked very quickly. As for the other elders, they went to other places to look for Bailey Hongzhuang. As long as any cultivator did not come, they could almost be sure that this person must be Bailey Hongzhuang. However, they had already checked most of the disciples, and only a small number of disciples had not been checked, and the elders had not sent any news. This was very strange. Bailey Hongzhuang would never disappear into thin air. Could it be that she had other means to hide her aura in addition to changing her appearance? This kind of method was just a thought, and the possibility of it happening was too small. This Bailey Hongzhuang is too good at hiding, isn't she? We haven't found her after so long. What do you think we should do if there's still no trace of Bailey Hongzhuang after checking everyone? It shouldn't be. Bailey Hongzhuang doesn't have 3 heads and 6 arms. This kind of situation can't disappear. A group of disciples whispered to each other as they looked at the cultivators who had not been checked. Most of them were sure that Bailey Hongzhuang was among them. At this moment, a shocking sound came from outside the gate of the Xianqing sect. Bang! The deafening sound made everyone in the Xianqing sect hear it clearly. Everyone turned their heads and looked in the direction of the gate in shock. What was going on? What's going on at the gate? Why is there such a sound? Could it be that Bailey Hongzhuang wants to take advantage of this time to rush out directly? So she's trying to break through the restriction? Just as the disciples were at a loss, they realized that the sect leader and the great elder had disappeared from where they were standing. The disciples didn't know what was going on, but the sect leader and the great elder knew it too well. This was not the sound of someone breaking through the restriction, but the sound of the restriction being broken. This situation was like someone was breaking into the Xianqing sect. Since the sect leader took office, this was the first time such a thing had happened. The other elders who were searching for Bailey Hongzhuang's aura were aware of this situation and did not have the heart to find out the whereabouts of Bailey Hongzhuang. Their figures flashed and rushed towards the gate. However, when the sect leader and the elders arrived, they saw that the restriction had been completely destroyed. The other party had long disappeared. Where is she? The sect leader turned his gaze to the stunned disciple and said angrily. Ling Chuan and the other disciples were already in a daze. They had been waiting for the sect leader's news. After all, the sect leader had said that they could not leave without being checked, so they had been standing there without moving. However, while they were waiting in boredom, they saw 3 figures suddenly appear. The granny in the lead waved her hand casually, and the restriction on the door was directly opened. All along, They had felt that the sex restrictions were extremely powerful, and that it was not something that anyone could easily shake. Now that they saw someone casually break the restriction, they even wondered if they had seen wrongly. Facing the sect leader's questioning, the disciples did not dare to delay and immediately pointed out the direction in which the three people had left. Chapter 64:44. It just so happened that a disciple who was guarding the water prison was here. When the three people appeared, he recognized Bailey Hongzhuang at a glance. That face that could turn all living things upside down was really unforgettable. Hearing this, the sect leader and the elders looked at each other. Their expressions suddenly changed, and they quickly rushed to the back. Ling Chuan looked at the scene in front of him and was also dumbfounded. He didn't think that Bailey Hongzhuang had really gone out. Even more so, he didn't expect that not only did Bailey Hongzhuang go out, but she also came back. However, no matter how stupid he was, he knew that she must be back to get revenge. Originally, when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's ability, he felt that she wasn't an ordinary abandoned person at all. Her methods were probably unparalleled in the entire Xianxing sect. Through the scene, just now, he understood the reason. That senior strength was really too strong. No wonder Bailey Hongzhuang was so strong at such a young age. As Ling Chuan thought about it, he couldn't help but smile. This was the first time he felt admiration and appreciation for a cultivator of the same generation. Even the first-day disciples of the sect didn't make him admire them so much. Has Bailey Hongzhuang already left our sect? Could it be that she's back to get revenge? That senior strength was really strong. The restriction was broken so easily. What do you think will happen later? Everyone looked at each other, and their minds were filled with thoughts. If the other party really made a scene like this, then their sect's face would really be lost. The sect leader's strength is high. Naturally, he wouldn't allow that senior to mess around. When Bailey Hongzhuang asked Ling Chuan about Guosheng, Ling Chuan told her where Guosheng was. Therefore, after entering, she didn't hesitate to bring her mother-in-law and Beichun directly to Guosheng's location, the Hall of Healing. A group of pharmacists gathered here, their faces full of anticipation. The antidote pill we've concocted this time is extremely effective. It should be able to cure the poison in Elder Guo's body. If this is true, then that's great. This way, we'll have one more type of poison in our grasp. If we make use of it in the future, the effect. Under everyone's expectant gazes, Guosheng suddenly realized that his body, which had been stiff for several days, was gradually regaining its senses. This feeling made him extremely happy. These few short days felt like years to him. Every day, he watched so many apothecaries trying to research it, yet they were still unable to decipher it. He was even worried that his life was over. Fortunately, the poison had finally been neutralized. Because of Bailey Hongzhuang, he lost his status as the main elder and became the joke of the entire Xianxing sect. Only by capturing Bailey Hongzhuang with his own hands could he make up for his mistakes and vent the hatred in his heart. Elder Guo has recovered. Haha, it's really settled. A joyful smile appeared on Guosheng's face, but a trace of viciousness quickly appeared in his eyes. He must capture Bailey Hongzhuang. Whether it was Bailey Hongzhuang or Di Beichun, he would not let any of them off. Bang! At this moment, the door to the Hall of Healing was smashed open with a bang. Immediately after, everyone sensed a tyrannical aura appear at the door. Everyone turned their heads one after another. Just as they were wondering who this person was, a voice full of energy suddenly rang out. Chapter 64:45. The old voice was arrogant and domineering, filled with endless anger. A tyrannical aura erupted, intimidating everyone in the Hall of Healing. No one could react for a moment. Guosheng had finally detoxified the poison. Before he could be proud of himself, he suddenly heard such an angry roar. He panicked for no reason, wondering if something had happened to Bailey Hongzhuang again. However, when he realized that the other party didn't know who he was and noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang was behind him, his confidence instantly rose. How dare you? How dare you trespass into the Hall of Healing? Guosheng shouted angrily. His face was filled with righteous indignation, but there was a trace of a smile in his eyes. He was worried about how to catch Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, this girl was as cunning as a loach. If so many elders couldn't find her, it wouldn't be easy for him to find her. He didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would deliver herself to his doorstep. Although he didn't know who the woman in front of him was, he knew Di Beichen. Originally, he wanted to go to the Immortal region and intercept Di Beichen. After all, as long as he could catch one of the two, it wouldn't be difficult to catch the other one. Now, not only did he see these two, he even got one as a gift. Ever since the sect master reprimanded him, he had been thinking about how to make up for his mistakes. If he only caught Bailey Hongzhuang, it was obviously not enough. After all, there was no enmity between Bailey Hongzhuang and the sect. However, after realizing Bailey Hongzhuang's situation, he suddenly found a glimmer of hope. Bailey Hongzhuang was able to use such a rare poison, which meant that she must have the resources in this area. As long as he could unearth all of this, the strength of the Hall of Healing of the Xianqing sect would greatly increase. As a main elder, the sect master was most interested in the opportunity to improve the Xianqing sect. As long as he could increase his strength, it would be a great merit. The merit would offset the fault. Then, the possibility of him taking back his previous position was very high. He might even be able to rise to a higher level because of this. In this way, those elders would definitely not laugh at him anymore. Now that he saw the woman in front of him, he suddenly realized that the reason why Bailey Hongzhuang was able to take out such a poison might have come from this woman. After all, it was impossible for Bailey Hongzhuang to have such superb medical skills at her age. Even the pharmacists of Xianqing sect couldn't compare with her. If he could capture this woman, wouldn't his contribution be even greater? You are Guosheng. Granny Hua's gaze locked onto Guosheng. The moment she locked onto him, Guosheng felt as if his entire body was enveloped by a powerful aura. It had been a long time since he had experienced such a feeling. It was a feeling that came from the bottom of his heart. Who are you? Guosheng looked at Grandma Huan nervously. He had realized that the woman in front of him was not simple. She was stronger than he had imagined. Master, that's him. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was as cold as ice. She clearly remembered everything that Guosheng had done to her. This damn guy. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Granny Hua's eyes flashed with a cold light. With a wave of her hand, a powerful chi swept across Guosheng's face. A very loud slap sounded. Pa! Chapter 6446. When the slap landed on his body, Guosheng wanted to run away immediately. Under the cover of that terrifying aura, he found that he didn't even have a chance to escape. The tyrannical air wave was like a mountain, and the moon slapped his face fiercely. At that moment, his blood and chi surged. Guosheng spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face instantly turned pale. Who are you? Guosheng's eyes widened as he stared at Granny Hua. With such strength, even in the immortal realm, she must be a famous figure. You don't deserve to know my name. Granny Hua looked at Guosheng with contempt. How dare you bully my disciple? You're courting death. Pa! Not waiting for Guosheng to react, another terrifying blast of air made him be sent flying out again. However, this slap was stronger than the previous one. It directly made him see stars, and his consciousness blurred. He looked at the people around him angrily. Could it be that these guys just watched him get beaten up? What are you doing? Guosheng's heart was filled with anger. However, he was seriously injured, and even his words seemed weak, without the slightest deterrence. The group of alchemists was completely stunned by the scene in front of them. Who would have thought that such a fiend would suddenly barge into the sect and start a fight without saying a word? Although Guosheng's strength wasn't the best among the 13 elders, he was definitely not the worst. However, in front of this senior, he didn't even have the slightest ability to fight back. It could be seen how terrifying this senior's strength was. Who are you? How can you barge into our sect? Granny Hua didn't even have the slightest intention of answering the questions of the alchemists. These guys didn't deserve her answer. Bailey Hongzhuang was also secretly shocked. She realized that she still underestimated her master's strength. That was the sex restriction that could be broken at any time. The heavily guarded Xianqing sect was fragile in front of her. The dignified elder was even less of a threat. Once she made a move, the other party didn't even have the strength to fight back. This feeling made Bailey Hongzhuang's heart boil. If he also had this kind of strength, then Guosheng wouldn't treat her like this. Take it, Granny Hua suddenly spoke. Then Bailey Hongzhuang found that there was a whip in front of her. How'd he hit you? Hit him back twice as hard, Granny Hua said coldly. After saying that, Granny Hua was not in a hurry to kill Guosheng. Instead, she stood quietly at the side with her arms crossed in front of her chest. Her expression had already revealed everything. I'm here to see who dares to move. Bailey Hongzhuang was also a little surprised that Granny Hua would ask her to do this. After she reacted, a smile appeared on her face. In the next moment, she walked forward, picked up the long whip, and slowly walked in front of Guosheng. Guosheng watched as Bailey Hongzhuang approached him step by step. His face turned pale. What are you doing? What do you think? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her brows slightly, and her clear eyes revealed a trace of ruthlessness as she asked in reply. This is the Xianqing sect. You'd better leave quickly. Otherwise, once the other elders arrive, you won't be able to leave even if you want to. Guosheng pretended to be fearless, but his voice had inadvertently revealed his guilty conscience and weakness. All he could do now was to stall for time. It was too difficult to resist. Chapter 6447. Smack! Bailey Hongzhuang did not show any mercy as she swung her whip down fiercely. She had always been a vengeful person. Furthermore, Guo Xiaojie and Guosheng were the ones who had caused all this trouble. Because of them, Xiaohei had been severely injured. Guosheng could not help but tremble as the whip swung down. A bloody gash appeared on his back, and his clothes were quickly dyed red. The intense pain caused Guosheng's face to turn ashen. His malicious gaze stared straight at Bailey Hongzhuang as if he could not wait to kill her. As an elder of the profound, pure sect, when had he ever suffered such humiliation? An abandoned person who had not even reached the Radiant Sun realm had actually dared to humiliate him in front of everyone. The hatred in his eyes gradually grew. He immediately wanted to charge out and kill Bailey Hongzhuang. Based on how much deep Beichin and this woman cared about Bailey Hongzhuang, as long as he could control Bailey Hongzhuang's life, the other party would definitely not dare to attack him. However, just as he charged out, a terrifying aura came crashing down on him once again, crushing his entire being. Granny Huan narrowed her eyes as a dim light appeared in her eyes. It seems that you're still not being honest. The terrifying aura was like a mountain crashing down on his body, causing him to spit out another mouthful of blood. Under this terrifying pressure, his internal organs felt like they were about to be crushed into a pulp. His body could not move at all. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally also noticed Guosheng's previous actions. Originally, she wanted to dodge, but she didn't think that her mother-in-law's speed would be even faster. She directly crushed Guosheng and made him unable to move. This kind of power was truly enviable. At the same time, she also felt very blessed to have such a protective master. Smack! The whip swung down again. Smack, smack! With new and old grudges added together, Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to return everything that had happened. Xiaohei was naturally very narrow-minded. This damned old man had tortured them so much earlier. Now that there was a chance, it would not let it go. Under everyone's astonished gazes, Xiaohei's body gradually grew from a small, squishy ball. She calmly ran to the side and fetched a basin of water. Then she took out salt. When they saw Xiaohei pour the salt into the water without hesitation and slowly walk to Guosheng's side, everyone felt a chill run down their spines. Bailey Hongzhuang, don't go overboard. Guosheng gritted his teeth and said angrily, the sect leader will be here soon, and you'll be finished by then. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into an enchanting smile. I don't know if I'm finished, but you're definitely finished. Ha! The long whip fiercely fell on the already bloody back. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that the long whip in her hand was different. Even with Guosheng's physique, It was so easy for his skin to split open. His painful appearance was even more indescribable. Are you just watching a show? Guosheng's face was pale. Due to the intense pain, cold sweat was dripping down his face. Every time the whip landed, he would tremble uncontrollably. He had almost forgotten how many years it had been since he had last suffered such pain. The group of medicine masters looked at each other. It was not that they did not want to help Guosheng, but this granny's power was just too strong. Even Guosheng did not have the power to retaliate in half a year. If they were to intervene, they would definitely die. At a time like this, who would dare to rush forward? Wouldn't that be courting death? Chapter 64:48. If we join forces, we will definitely be able to save Elder Guo. Medicine Master Ji's expression was solemn. He had taken his antidote a little later than Guosheng, so he could only watch the scene unfold before his eyes. Now that he had finally regained his mobility, he naturally couldn't just watch Guosheng get beaten to death. An elder of a sect had actually been beaten to death by an abandoned person. This was probably the first time this had happened in the immortal realm. The hesitant medicine masters seemed to have found their backbone when they saw Medicine Master Ji nod his head. They did not delay any longer and charged forward together. However, when faced with the group of medicine masters who had charged forward, a disdainful light appeared in Granny Hua's eyes. She calmly spat out, overconfident, "Bang!" With a wave of her hand, a terrifying wave of air swept outwards. The group of cultivators who had been charging forward were all sent flying by this terrifying wave of air. At this moment, they finally understood how terrifying the power that Guosheng had endured was. This level of power has definitely far surpassed theirs. Since when did the abandoned immortal forest have such a malefic star? Before the medicine masters at the back could charge forward, they saw the cultivators in front of them being sent flying. They paused in their steps, and a thick sense of fear appeared on their faces. They hesitated and did not dare to charge forward. Attack her directly. Medicine Master Ji climbed to his feet. Even though he could not hide the fear on his face, his confidence in saving Guosheng was still firm. Hearing this, the medicine masters immediately used all their skills and charged towards Granny Hua. A sense of worry appeared in Di Beichen's eyes when he saw this. However, Granny Hua gently shook her head, indicating that there was no need to worry. Then, Granny Hua waved her hand, and a restrictive barrier appeared out of thin air. She then ignored the people who were attacking with all their might, and turned towards Bailey Hongzhuang in an amiable manner. "Don't worry, you can continue." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled upwards. Indeed, with Granny Hua here to hold the fort, there really was nothing to worry about. She thought about how these people had tried all sorts of ways to capture her, and how they could not do anything to her now. The difference between them and her was too obvious. Bang! One attack after another landed on the barrier, but all it did was cause ripples, and there were no signs of it collapsing. Seeing this scene, everyone was completely dumbfounded. Just how strong was this woman? It was actually so terrifying. Xiaohe. Bailey Hongzhuang gave Xiaohe a look. Xiaohe immediately understood and poured the salt water on Guosheng. Voila! Under the impact of the salt water, Guosheng couldn't help but let out a blood-curdling scream. His body trembled, and the pain was magnified infinitely. He wished he could just faint. However, this terrifying pain stimulated his senses endlessly, preventing him from fainting. Does this feel good? Looking at the trembling Guosheng, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly squatted down, her eyes cold and calm. Bailey Hongzhuang. Guosheng stared weakly at Bailey Hongzhuang. Under the pain, even speaking a single word required a great deal of effort. If my guess is correct, Guoxiaojia had died at your hands, right? Bailey Hongzhuang narrowed her phoenix-like eyes. When she had first heard Ling Chuan say that Guoxiaojia had died at her hands, she felt that it was strange. Guoxiaojia's madness was within their expectations, but his life had been preserved. Chapter 64:49. Guoxiaojia, who had fallen into madness, should be a disgrace to Guosheng, so he ended Guosheng's life with his own hands. This kind of thing was unbelievable to many people, but when it happened to Guosheng, she didn't find it strange at all. This guy was definitely a vicious and merciless person. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Guosheng and Medicine Master Ji's faces turned pale. The others were a little stunned. Guo Xiaojie had died at the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang. This was the fact that they believed. And Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly said such a thing under such circumstances, so the possibility of this was also increasing. Nonsense! Guo Sheng cursed. Xiaojie clearly died at your hands, so I want to avenge him. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. In the end, who did this? You and I both know very well. Why are you still pretending? When the sect leader and the great elder arrived, they saw this scene. They saw Guosheng lying on the ground, his clothes dyed red with blood, and the shocking wound was very shocking. The group of medicine masters was directly blocked outside the restriction, and they couldn't even get close to it. On the contrary, Bailey Hongzhuang was holding a long whip. It was obvious that the injuries on Guosheng's body were caused by her. Beside Bailey Hongzhuang was an unusually handsome man. At a glance, the two of them seemed to be a match made in heaven. However, the two of them were most concerned about the woman sitting leisurely at the side. It was obvious that she was the one who broke the restriction of the Xianqing sect and caused this situation. The sect leader and the great elder were secretly shocked. At this moment, they could only see the back of the woman, but they couldn't see her true appearance. However, to be able to do all this so casually, this kind of strength was definitely not something ordinary people could compare to. Even they had to be careful. Since this person dared to break in here, he must have enough confidence in his own strength. How dare you? Who are you? How dare you cause trouble in our Xianqing sect? The first elder shouted angrily. This person was too bold. He actually dared to come here directly. This was simply provoking the entire Xianqing sect. When Guosheng saw the sect leader and great elder appear, he heaved a sigh of relief. This time, there was finally hope. The group of pharmacists also relaxed a little. This woman's strength was not something they could contend against, but the sect leader and great elder might have a way. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly turned around and looked at the two people behind her. This was the first time she met the head of the Xianqing sect. Originally, there was no conflict between the two of them, but because of Guosheng, this grudge was completely formed. How dare you trespass into my Xianqing sect? Have you thought about the consequences? The sect leader's face was ashen. If he didn't take the other party's life, he wouldn't be the sect leader anymore. The next moment, the sect leader threw a punch at Granny Hua. As soon as the sect leader made his move, a terrifying wave of air also swept out. Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichen suddenly had a trace of nervousness in their eyes. Others might not care, but the sect leader of the Xianqing sect was extremely strong. Granny Hua waved her hand and blocked the sect leader's attack. Long time no see. Your strength has increased a lot. Granny Hua slowly turned around, and her gaze fell on the sect leader. Chapter 6450. The sect leader immediately retracted his attack. The dignified look on his face had disappeared and was replaced with respect. I never thought that it would be Senior Hua. I have been disrespectful. The sect leader joined his fists and bowed respectfully. His eyes were filled with fear. You have a good memory, sect leader. You still remember me. The corners of Grandma Hua's lips curled into a small smile, but the smile did not reach her eyes. She was clearly smiling, but it inexplicably gave everyone present a terrifying pressure. Xia, will never forget Senior's kindness and will always remember in my heart. I only hope that one day I will be able to repay your kindness. It's just that I haven't seen any trace of my mother-in-law since then. I feel guilty. The sudden turn of events had exceeded everyone's expectations. The great elder was about to attack when he suddenly noticed the change in the sect leader's attitude. Fortunately, he immediately stopped. No one would have thought that the sect leader would recognize this person. Furthermore, based on the situation, it seems that the sect leader had received a favor from the senior. Guosheng, who had always regarded the sect leader as a savior, was completely dumbfounded. He had always hoped that the sect leader would save him from the abyss of suffering and kill Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. However, This senior had actually done the sect leader a favor. He had never seen the sect leader display such an attitude before. His heart sank. Even an idiot would know that based on the sect leader's attitude, he would definitely not clash with this senior. If that were to happen, his little life would be lost. Grandma Hua, on the other hand, was not too concerned about this. She elegantly sat down and smiled. This person had captured my disciple and tortured her in every possible way. What do you think I should do? The sect leader turned his gaze towards Bailey Hongzhuang. When he had first found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had such abilities, he had felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's identity was not simple and that there must be a powerful person behind her. Now, it seems that his judgment was not wrong at all. However, he never would have thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would be Senior Hua's disciple. What a great blessing this was. Senior Hua's reputation was shocking, but she had never accepted a disciple. Bailey Hongzhuang already had such ability at such a young age. In the future, she would definitely make a name for herself in the immortal realm. This person dared to hurt Senior's disciple. Naturally, he deserves to die. The sect leader said with a smile on his face. It was as if the person in front of him was not an elder of the Xianqing sect, but an insignificant stranger. After knowing that this matter was related to Senior Hua, he had given up on Guosheng. If he offended Senior Hua, and come, Senior. The great elder and the group of elders who had just arrived were completely dumbfounded when they saw this scene. How terrifying was this senior's ability to actually make the sect leader's attitude change so drastically? It's good that you know. Grandma Hua nodded indifferently and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. Do what you want. Don't worry. Chapter 64:51. In that moment, everyone in the Hall of Healing fell silent. The situation in front of them couldn't be any more obvious. Everyone understood that Guosheng was going to die today. It was fine if he'd wanted to kill Bailey Hongzhuang, but he'd wanted to kidnap her and bring her here. He was seeking his own death. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Guosheng indifferently. She and Xiaohei had pretty much finished venting their anger. There was really no need to waste any more time on this kind of guy. However, it would be too easy for this guy to die, just like that. She'd originally thought that someone like Guo Xiaojie deserved to die, but now she felt that Guosheng was even more detestable than Guo Xiaojie. If it wasn't for her backing, any other person would have died at her hands. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked forward. Guosheng looked at the approaching Bailey Hongzhuang and felt as if the god of death was approaching him. He hurriedly called out, "Don't come here, don't come here." That anxious and pale voice seemed to have no meaning. Bailey Hongzhuang walked in front of him and reached out to feed him a pill. Gulp. Bailey Hongzhuang pinched Guosheng's chin and forced the pill into his stomach, not allowing him to refuse. Ugh, cough, cough. No matter how hard Guosheng tried to spit it out, it was useless. The pill melted as soon as it entered his mouth. There was no way to reverse the situation. Medicine Master Ji also quietly retreated from the crowd of medicine masters when he saw this scene. Guosheng was going to die without a doubt. If he continued to stay here, he might not be able to keep his own life. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed Medicine Master Ji's departure, but didn't take it to heart. This guy didn't have any deep grudges with them. He wasn't involved in the previous incident either, so there was no need to kill him. Di Beichen naturally noticed as well, but he respected Hongzhuang's decision. Granny, I've taken care of it. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Granny Hua. Her peerless face rippled with an elegant and refined smile. At first, the crowd had only thought of Bailey Hongzhuang as a star of misfortune. Now that they took a closer look, they realized that Bailey Hongzhuang was truly a lotus that had emerged from clear water. She was a natural sculpture. Such a beauty was truly breathtaking. Granny Hua nodded gently, then stood up. Since it's settled, let's go. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen immediately walked behind Grandma Hua. The purpose of their trip was to solve Guosheng. Now that everything had been solved, it was time to leave. However, when the sect leader saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was about to leave, he quickly said, "Senior Hua, this matter is due to my incompetence. If you leave like this, I really feel guilty." Why don't I give this small token of my apology to Lady Bailey? I hope you'll accept it." The sect master smiled and handed a Chinquin bag to Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang instinctively looked at Granny Hua. She didn't know what kind of relationship Granny Hua and the sect master had in the past. The sect master had only taken out this item for Granny Hua's sake. Granny Hua glanced at it calmly and said, "Since it's a token of the sect master's goodwill, Hongzhuang, you should accept it." "Yes, master." Bailey Hongzhuang took the Chinquin bag. Anything that the sect master had taken out would definitely not be simple. This time, she had already obtained a few treasures from the resource room. If she were to include this, it would be a bountiful harvest. Chapter 6452. At some unknown time, the area around the Hall of Healing was filled with cultivators. Everyone wanted to know what the final outcome would be. These three were simply too arrogant. The head and elders have already rushed over. They should have already subdued them. But I've been here for quite a while. Why haven't I heard anything? Logically speaking, it shouldn't be so peaceful. The crowd of disciples couldn't help but be curious. Such calmness really didn't look like a big fight. However, the next scene completely destroyed their worldview. This was because everyone saw the three figures walk out of the Hall of Healing unscathed. They walked out. Everyone stared with wide eyes, their hearts filled with disbelief. Could it be that the head and elders weren't a match for this old lady? When the crowd saw the head and first elder send off Bailey Hongzhuang and the others with smiles on their faces, they didn't know what to say anymore. Is there something wrong with my eyes? You didn't see wrong. My God, how strong is Bailey Hongzhuang's backer? Under the flabbergasted gazes of countless disciples, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others walked out of the Xianqing sect unhurriedly and leisurely. Ling Chuan's heart thumped. When no one was paying attention, he quietly gave Bailey Hongzhuang a thumbs up. Amazing. This was really a cheat. The head and first elder only returned to the Hall of Healing after Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had left. Guo Sheng, who'd been beaten until he was covered in wounds, howled with a savage expression. It was obvious that the effects of the pill had been quite frightening. "Head, what do we do with Guo Sheng now?" the first elder inquired. The head waved his hand in disgust. "Drag him away and bury him." Everyone's hearts trembled when they heard these words. The first elder waved his hand, and someone dragged Guo Sheng away. "Bury him further away." The head's voice sounded again. The two disciples dragging Guo Sheng also nodded. Bright red blood stained the ground. Contrasting with the sect leader's expressionless face, the atmosphere became gloomy and oppressive for no reason. No one dared to breathe loudly. They felt as if an invisible hand was squeezing their hearts, as if it could crush them at any time. "Sect leader, what is the background of that, Granny? You actually need to treat me with such an attitude?" The first elder was the sect master's trusted aide. Even if no one dared to speak up, he still dared to ask. "You haven't seen her before, but you must have heard of her name." The sect leader slowly looked up. His eyes were dark and unfathomable, as if he was recalling memories from many years ago. "She is the holy poison doctor, Grandma Hua." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone could not help but gasp. Everyone who had their heads lowered could not help but raise their heads. Their faces were filled with astonishment and disbelief. Most of the people present were medicine masters. Perhaps they had not heard of some of the peerless experts, but the great name of the holy poison doctor, Grandma Hua, was deeply engraved in their hearts. It's said that the holy poison doctor's skills in medicine and poison have reached the pinnacle of perfection. She can even raise bones and revive the dead. Many have wanted to become her disciple, but were rejected. However, after that incident, Grandma Hua disappeared without a trace. No one has been able to find her. Chapter 6453. That's right, it's her. The sect master's dull voice was filled with certainty. Back then, I was plotted against and painstakingly searched for Granny Hua. It was because she saved me that I was able to survive. Hearing this, everyone understood everything. Before they knew Granny Hua's identity, they thought the sect master's actions were a little too cowardly. Now that they understood everything, they only felt that the sect master's decision was too wise. How famous was Granny Hua? Even though she had been missing all these years, no one in the entire immortal realm would forget her name. The group of pharmacists even regarded Granny Hua as a role model. It wasn't until they saw Granny Hua's strength that they realized that not only was Granny Hua's medical and poison skills powerful, but her strength was also extremely powerful. So, Guosheng will undoubtedly die. The sect master's voice was calm, and there was not the slightest ripple in his eyes. If he had known that Guosheng had offended Granny Hua, then there was no need for Granny Hua to appear. He would have already dealt with Guosheng himself. No one doubted that with Granny Hua's means, not to mention Guosheng, even if she wanted to kill the entire Xianqing sect cultivators, it would be a simple matter. Sect Master, Granny Hua should have calmed down by now, right? Second Elder couldn't help but show worry on his face. Although the Sect Master had tried his best to make up for it, no one knew if such a great fiend would still hold a grudge in her heart. If that was the case, then almost everyone's hearts began to waver. They couldn't bear to part with the Xianqing sect, but they couldn't bear to part with their lives even more. The sect master's gaze swept across everyone before he said, "Don't worry. Granny Hua has always been clear about gratitude and grudges. Since she said that this debt has been settled, then there should be no problem." He was actually very worried about this matter, but fortunately, the situation shouldn't be too bad. Facing the sect master's calm and composed gaze, the originally anxious people calmed down and stopped their panicked thoughts. This matter didn't happen. Don't casually spread the news of Granny Hua's appearance. Otherwise, once it spreads, if you lose your life, don't blame me for not saving you. Everyone's heart trembled, and they lowered their heads again. They felt the scene of Granny Hua's attack very clearly. In the face of such a peerless powerhouse, they didn't even have the strength to fight back. They were all smart people and naturally knew what could be said and what could not be said. They would definitely not make such a mistake. However, they couldn't help but feel a little regretful that their idol had left in front of them just like that. If he had the opportunity to consult Granny Hua, it would be a great blessing in his life. For a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang had become the target of envy for all the pharmacists. It was no wonder that she could give them such a huge problem the moment she made a move. If he were to meet Bailey Hongzhuang again in the future, her methods would definitely become even more terrifying. After leaving Xianqing sect, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen followed Granny Hua all the way to the gate of the immortal realm. "Everyone is worried about you, but there are too many of us. Granny only brought me in, the others are waiting outside." Looking at the beautiful face in front of him, Di Beichen's eyes revealed a trace of pity. Chapter 6454. "Granny, are we leaving now?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the kind figure in front of her. Unlike the cold and ruthless attitude she had towards the cultivators of Xianqing sect, Granny Hua had returned to her usual kind appearance. That appearance clearly didn't have the slightest lethality. She was as kind as an ordinary old woman. However, anyone who had heard of Granny Hua's reputation would know how ruthless and heartless this kind granny in front of them could be once she made a move. "If you want to stay here and take a look, that's fine." Granny Hua smiled faintly. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. "Let's go back first. There will be plenty of opportunities to see the immortal region in the future. However, I heard Guosheng say that he seems to have arranged for people near the gate of the immortal region. I wonder if Serene and the others will be in danger? We already found those people when we came here. They've already been dealt with." Di Beichen's clear voice cut through Bailey Hongzhuang's heart and took away her worries. "That's good." Bailey Hongzhuang breathed a sigh of relief and smiled as she held Di Beichen's hand. "Let's go back quickly." Outside the immortal region, Serene and the others paced back and forth outside the gate. They couldn't hide the worry on their faces. "How do you think Granny Hua and the others will save Hongzhuang? They won't just barge in, right?" When Serene looked worried. Although they also knew that it would take a long time to reach the Xianqing sect, waiting here was really like waiting for a year. No, it was like waiting for a minute, and a second was like a year. Granny Hua's strength is high. It shouldn't be a problem. Mo Yunjua's eyes were as deep as ink. His ice-cold face didn't have the slightest breath of the mortal world. However, Just by observing his eyes, one could still see a trace of extreme worry. As early as the moment he knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was taken away, his heart had never been at ease. However, he firmly believed that Hongzhuang would come back safe and sound. I hope I can come back soon. Waiting like this is too torturous. Shangguan Yingying's face was bitter. When she thought that Hongzhuang might be abused, she was so anxious that she wanted to cry. Just as everyone was panicking, a lazy voice that sounded like the sound of nature slowly rang out not far away. I'm back. A stunningly beautiful woman wearing a simple and elegant moon-colored dress slowly appeared in front of everyone. Under the bright sunlight, that almost flawless and stunning face exuded an enchanting luster, instantly lighting up everyone's eyes. Mo Yunjue and the others were all pleasantly surprised. In the next moment, everyone rushed forward like a swarm of bees, surrounding Bailey Hongzhuang. Hongzhuang, you're finally back. Shangguan Yingying held Bailey Hongzhuang's soft hand, and the tension in her heart finally dissipated at this moment. You've worried us to death. At this moment, that flawless and beautiful face revealed an apologetic expression. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was as pleasant as a stream. I've made everyone worry about me. As long as you can come back safely, that Guosheng is really too hateful. Bali Yanche breathed a sigh of relief. His originally dim eyes regained their usual luster. And Mo Yunjue, who had been silent all this time, faintly said, That guy, is he dead? The cold voice was like a 10,000-year-old ice that couldn't be melted. Everyone around could feel the strong, killing intent in this calm voice. Chapter 6455. Abandoned Immortal Forest. When everyone returned to their residence, they found that other than the three seniors they were familiar with, Meng Buchuan was also here. You're back. Hearing the commotion outside, Huashu Kong and the others walked out of the house and looked at everyone with a smile. That calm look, it was as if they had already expected this result. Hongzhuang, you have to be more careful in the future. Huashu Kong looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a faint smile. You, Granny Hua, haven't been to the Immortal Region for many years. This time, she made an exception for you. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced sideways and thought of the Xianqing sect master's frightened expression. She understood that Granny Hua must be a famous figure in the Immortal Region. Even if the Xianqing sect wasn't a big sect, the sect master naturally had some strength. She could clearly see that Granny Hua showed such an expression. It was fear from the bottom of her heart. Zhongli Mu and the others looked at Bailey Hongzhuang curiously. They also wanted to know what Granny Hua did in the Xianqing sect. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Master is very strong. Once she attacked, she suppressed the others until they couldn't move. Those guys from the Xianqing sect can be dealt with easily. What's there to say? Granny Hua obviously didn't care about this at all. Instead, she looked at everyone seriously. This incident can be considered a lesson for you. You have to be more careful in the future. You can't let these things happen again. Fortunately, Hongzhuang's ability to escape is very strong. Otherwise, if she was controlled, she might not be so lucky. Meng Buchuan's eyes revealed a trace of curiosity. Granny Hua, from what you said, could it be that this girl escaped by herself? Of course. Granny Hua's face revealed a trace of smile. It was a relief from the bottom of her heart. When Beichun and I arrived, Hongzhuang had already escaped by herself. Not only that, she also blew up Guosheng's residence and poisoned him. If that guy wasn't lucky, I didn't have to do anything. He would have been poisoned to death by Hongzhuang. As soon as he said that, Shangguan Yingying and the others sighed with emotion. This guy is really not human. Apart from her, there was probably no one else who could cause such a huge commotion after being captured. Zhongli Xiao ran, and the others immediately thought highly of Bailey Hongzhuang. To be able to do this at such a young age, it was indeed not something an ordinary young person could do. Since you're back, we have good news for you. Yu Hong smiled. He wasn't too worried about Bailey Hongzhuang. Just by looking at the girl's complexion, he could tell that she was recovering well and that her injuries weren't serious. Moreover, with Granny Hua around, even if she was injured, she would be able to recover very quickly. What good news? Everyone looked up, their faces filled with curiosity. Old Man Zhong Li and Old Man Meng are preparing to take Beichin and Yunju as disciples respectively to see whose disciple is better. Yu Hong smiled as he looked at Zhongli Shao Ran and Meng Buchuan behind him. These two old men's abilities aren't weak. Back then, who knows how many little fellows wanted to learn from them. Such a good opportunity, the two of you can't miss it. It's best if you learn their skills so that when you walk the Jianghu in the future, you'll be able to take charge. Chapter 6456. When Di Xiaofeng and the others heard this news, they secretly sighed. Could this be considered a predestined fate? Di Beichin and Yunju were good friends, but that didn't change the fact that they were rivals in love. Senior Zhong Li had always been the strongest among the four seniors. Since Senior Meng's strength had always been on par with him, it meant that Senior Meng's strength was also astonishing. Now that he had chosen two people as his disciples, it could be said that their fate was deep. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at the two of them in surprise, then revealed a bright smile. Why aren't you two greeting your masters? After such a long time, the conflict between the two had already been opened. This was just a bet between the two seniors. As long as their strength could be improved, this was already the best result. Di Beichin and Mo Yunjua looked at each other, and a faint smile appeared on their incomparably handsome faces. In an instant, a smile like a glacier, like the spring of March, and the next moment, the two turned to their masters and respectfully bowed. Greetings, masters. Zhongli Shao Ran and Meng Buchuan also stopped their previous quarrel at this moment, and a satisfied smile appeared on their faces. Although accepting these two little guys as disciples was also part of competition, they definitely wouldn't accept them as disciples just because of this. It was more because they felt that these two little guys were moldable talents. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were filled with joy. Granny Hua's strength was enough to enter and leave a sect unimpeded. Senior Zhong Li was even stronger than Granny Hua, so there was no need to mention his strength. Although Senior Zhong Li would occasionally give a few pointers, it was only pointers. Once he became a master, it would be a true teaching. The two were completely different situations. After Meng Buchuan accepted Mo Yunjue as his disciple, he originally wanted to bring Mo Yunjue back to his residence. Back then, Yu Hong and the others had also invited Meng Buchuan to stay with them. However, because Meng Buchuan and Zhongli Shaoran's temperaments were not compatible, they would inevitably have some conflicts every time. That was why they did not stay together. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had been training together for so long. Naturally, they didn't want Mo Yunjue to go to such a faraway place. Even though they were all in the abandoned immortal forest, it would still take a few days to get there. Since these little fellows have been cultivating together, in my opinion, Old Man Meng, you might as well stay here, Granny Hua slowly said. Hearing this, Meng Buchuan frowned. Originally, he really did not have such a plan. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other, and then turned to look at Zhongli Shaoran. The biggest reason why Senior Meng didn't want to stay here was probably because of Senior Zhong Li. If Senior Zhong Li didn't agree, then Senior Meng definitely wouldn't stay. Feeling everyone's gaze, Zhongli Shaoran said, Yes, we're full here. If you want to stay, then build your own house. Although he was still a bit unwilling, it was obvious that he had agreed. Everyone was overjoyed when they saw this. As long as Senior Meng stayed here, even if they didn't become his disciples, they might be able to learn a few moves. Following such a senior, as long as they could learn a few trump cards, it would be enough. As Zhongli Shaoran left, Meng Buchuan's gaze also fell on Mo Yunjue. Chapter 6457. Granny Hua. Yu Hong, Hua Shukong. He had long guessed that this guy was so lazy that it was absolutely impossible for him to do it himself. But wasn't this too natural? Master, leave it to me. Mo Yunjue nodded. Meng Buchuan showed a satisfied smile. Master, let me tell you, although I was neck and neck with Old Man Zhong Li, in fact, everyone knew that I was stronger than him. It was only because this old man's personality was weird that everyone didn't want to offend him. So they said that we were neck and neck. Granny Hua and the others held their foreheads. This guy's shameless look was really painful to the eyes. So, My disciple, you definitely don't want me to live in a place worse than old man Zhongli, right? Meng Buchuan looked at Emo Yunjue with a smile. The little stars shining in his eyes very well expressed his inner expectations. Sure enough, what he said before was nonsense. This was Meng Buchuan's real purpose. Master, rest assured, disciple will do his best. Emo Yunjue didn't feel that there was any problem with this request. It was his blessing that his master was willing to teach him. Now he only needed to build a house. It was really not difficult. After leaving the house, Emo Yunjue quickly began to build Meng Buchuan's house near Granny Hua and the others. When Xiren and the others saw this, they naturally couldn't let Emo Yunjue build it alone. Although it wasn't a magnificent house, it would still take a lot of time for one person to build it. However, with their help, the speed would inevitably be greatly accelerated. Meng Buchuan looked at Emo Yunjue and the others who were sweating like rain not far away, comfortably leaning on the recliner while waving a fan, very satisfied. It's good to be young. Look at these little guys. No matter what they do, they're full of enthusiasm. Looking at Meng Buchuan's proud look, Granny Hua and the others were speechless. This guy's character really didn't change at all after so many years. While the men were busy building the house, Bailey Hongzhuang, Bailey Yinyin, and the others began to prepare today's lunch. Fortunately, this time, in order to please Senior Meng, we have bought almost all the household utensils we might need. After the house is built, we only need to put the things in. The corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly. She had originally thought that there were still so many things in the chaos ring, but she didn't know where to put them. Now they all had a use. I don't know what Senior Meng used to do, but just from his appearance, I feel that he's not simple. Ling revealed a rare look of curiosity. Once Senior Zhong Li and Senior Meng began to seriously instruct them, Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue's strength would definitely increase by leaps and bounds. Zhongli Mu looked at the model of the house and couldn't help but look at Zhongli Xiaoran. Grandpa, Senior Meng's house seems to be bigger than the one we live in now. Zhongli Mu then looked at the place where they were staying. It was obvious that he could see the size of the place from the frame. Hearing this, Zhongli Xiaoran couldn't help but frown. Then he heard Meng Buchuan's proud voice not far away. I'm a person, I don't care about other things, but this place must be bigger than old man Zhong Li's place. Only this is worthy of my status. Don't you think so? Chapter 6458. Yu Hong, Huashu Kong. Granny Hua looked at the two speechless people and could not help but say, did we make a mistake in letting old man Meng live here? Yu Hong and Huashu Kong turned to look at her with a look of certainty. If they had known this would happen, they would have let old man Meng bring Mo Yunjue to his place. Although there was some distance, it would only take some time. However, with old man Meng here, there would be sparks between him and old man Zhongli every day. I have a feeling that old man Zhongli will not sit still and wait for his death. Yu Hong raised his eyebrows with a complicated expression. However, just as Yu Hong finished speaking, Zhongli Xiaoran's voice was heard. I have lived in this house for some years, and it has not been maintained for many years. It is rather inconvenient. Since you are building a house now, why don't you rebuild mine too? With that, Zhongli Xiaoran gave Zhongli Mu a look. Zhongli Mu immediately understood and shouted, Brother Di, my grandfather wants to rebuild his house. Di Beichun was helping Mo Yunjue build his house. When he heard Zhongli Mu's words, a trace of surprise appeared in his eyes. He slowly walked in front of Zhongli Xiaoran and cupped his hands. Master, you want to build a house? Zhongli Xiaoran nodded slightly and looked at Meng Buchuan from the corner of his eyes. I am not comfortable living in this house now. I want to build a bigger house. Yes, master. How could Di Beichen not understand that his master was competing with Senior Meng? In fact, when he heard Senior Meng deliberately say those words to his master, he already had this premonition in his heart. At this moment, he did not find it strange at all, since his master needed it. As his disciple, he would build it. Meng Buchuan saw that Zhongli Xiaoran wanted to build a house for no reason and was immediately displeased. Old man Zhongli, you have lived in this house for so many years. Isn't it fine? I want to build a new one. Is there a problem? Zhongli Xiaoran's face was calm. Obviously, he would not admit that he was competing with Meng Buchuan. Meng Buchuan narrowed his eyes at Zhongli Xiaoran. You are still the same old fox. Not as good as you. I knew it. Yu Hong spread out his hands. He was no stranger to such a lively scene. Back then, they had also spent their days in such an environment. Granny Hua face-bombed. If it weren't for the two old men in front of me, I would really think that they were a couple. You hit the nail on the head. Hui Shukong nodded. After all these years, your foresight is still as accurate as ever. Granny Hua was speechless. During the construction of the house, Zhongli Xiaoran and Meng Bukun had become supervisors. No matter what the matter was, the two of them would compete. This made the younger generation suffer. When Ziren and the others complained incessantly, saying that it was impossible to live like this, Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue had a tacit understanding. The two of them decided to build the two houses exactly the same. This way, the two seniors wouldn't have anything to argue about. However, when they carried out this plan, the two seniors strongly opposed it. Even so, under the two's insistence, the two identical buildings were completed. Chapter 6459. In the end, Zhongli Xiaoran and Meng Buchuan accepted it. When Ziren and the others cried out in relief, they could finally be at ease now. This was just building a house. They felt more tired than going out to train. At the same time, they saw how scary the two seniors could be when they were serious. Di Xiaofeng patted Di Beichen's shoulder. Second brother, I'm afraid it'll be hard on you in the future. Di Beichen, Yu Hong and the other two had been in seclusion for the past few days with the intention of out of sight, out of mind. They didn't show their faces until they heard that the house had been completed. Only then did they come out of the house. Hui Shukong could not help but nod when he saw the identical layout and furnishings in the two houses. The two of you are quite capable. Hearing this, Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue couldn't help but sigh. They had no choice. Thankfully, after the house was finished, Zhongli Xiaoran and Meng Buchuan split up to teach Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue. This reduced the conflict. During the day, everyone cultivated together. During the night, Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue learned from their masters. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, a year had passed. In this year, Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, and Mo Yunjue all broke through to the Radiant Sun stage. Ziren and the rest were only a step away. Don't look down on the first level. It took a lot of effort to break through. Now, everyone understood that the speed of cultivation couldn't be compared to before. It took a lot of time to break through to the next level. Now, they didn't have anyone to compare themselves to. So, they didn't know if their cultivation speed was slow in the immortal domain. The only thing they knew was that Zhongli Mu was younger than them, but his cultivation was higher than theirs. On this day, the five seniors called everyone together. I'll give you 1 month. Those who haven't broken through to the Radiant Sun stage have to use this 1 month to break through. Everyone was stunned when they heard the news. They didn't understand why the seniors would suddenly give them such a mission. Senior, is something the matter? Ziren couldn't help but ask. Meng Buchuan continued. You've been learning from us for a long time. Cultivating in seclusion all day will only increase your strength. Since you're young, you should go out and take a look. Otherwise, if you stay here for too long, I'm afraid you won't be able to adapt to the law of the jungle. The moment these words were spoken, everyone's hearts could not help but tremble. During this period of time, they had been living too comfortably. Although there were cultivators in the forsaken immortal forest, as they gradually reached the Radiant Sun stage, no one came to find trouble with them. What's more, they didn't dress like people from the abandoned immortal forest, so most cultivators thought they were from the immortal region. Even if they didn't slack off on their cultivation, they had to admit that they were much more comfortable than before. If this continued, they wouldn't be much different from those people who cultivated in a greenhouse. So, I'll give you 1 month. If you break through to the Radiant Sun stage in 1 month, you can leave together. If you can't, then the others will leave together.